All right. That was a little bit of Wagner to get us going. Thanks for being here. It's Sunday night. Welcome to another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. I apologize for being late, but if it was the previous time, I'd be right on time. Just think about that. I'd be on the dot. Anyway, I'm here. You're here. Thanks for being here. And behind me, we have a splendorous rendition of an interior from the Gilded Age. Got a little bit of shadow happening over here. It's okay. It's by choice. Casting a shadow upon the Gilded Age. Anyway, there's a reason why I have this background, which may change throughout the course of the night. But the reason why I have it is because we're going to return to Tartaria, and I'm going to go back and try to piece together what was happening uh, during this. Seems like it's a pretty significant shift right around the 1850s. So we're going to look at the astrology for that. Right around that time, late 1840s, early 1850s. And we're going to also look at some of the inventions that took place prior to that period of time, because they have what's called the Second Industrial Revolution, which of course happens after this very strange period that a lot of people are really starting to look at. And I would compare that, and I'm going to compare that with three other times that we've experienced massive social, cultural, and even technological change. And these have happened in most of our lifetimes. So we're going to get into that tonight. Three separate period epochs and eras. And we're going to look at where Uranus plays a really important role in terms of what was going on theoretically during this time in the 1850s, where there seems to be this sort of, how do I say this, titanic or monumental. There's this monumental kind of rift that takes place right around there. So, and we'll look at a few other, like I said, we'll look at a few other cycles that are, I think, important, and we're headed towards one in the not so distant future, and they have to do with outer planets, mainly Uranus and Pluto. But we'll look at a couple of Uranus Neptune cycles here as well. And the idea is to give people an understanding about these cycles of change and how we can see them being repeated through time. And they're usually also there's a pattern that also has to do with war that are related to these cycles. So there seems to be some kind of major tectonic shift in terms of almost like a AC 80 BC 80 experience. Like there's this tectonic shift that takes place. Then there's some form of assimilation, and then there's a war. And the wars tend to be fairly significant, like pretty large scale. And I would contend that we're in one of those wars now, and we can even go back and look at the Vietnam War, which we will, because the Vietnam War is again another one of these wars that's predicated by this very daunting, powerful cultural conjunction of two outer planets. And the United States and the West is not the same world post Vietnam War. It's just not. And it's interesting. I mean, it's really interesting watching these cycles take place. And as I said, we're in the midst of one now, and we can even go back and look at like where Neptune and Uranus were both making huge shifts right around 2011. They're not going into the same sign. Uranus is going from Pisces into Aries, and Neptune is going from Aquarius into Pisces. It's a big period. But we will have a look at the Neptune Uranus conjunctions that were happening during the 1990s, which again are incredibly significant. And what a lot of people don't understand about the 1990s is that the 1990s were a decade that was really filled with a lot of war. I mean, for a period where supposedly the Soviet Union had collapsed and we were all just one big happy planet. It's really not the case. I mean, there was a lot of war going on, especially in the Balkans, and really significant. Of course, we had this kind of ongoing disaster with Iraq that had started at the beginning of the 90s, and that was going on all the way through the 90s. Like the United States never really let up on Iraq during the 90s. They had sanctions, and the Iraqis could not really fly a whole lot over the airspace because that airspace was being patrolled by the U.S. and NATO forces. And if they thought that there was any high strange going on with the Iraqis, like they were trying to bring things in or out that they thought were going to be less than, I don't know. I don't even think they could have gotten basic foodstuffs. I mean, I think that's how tight these sanctions were. And I remember planes being shot out of the sky over Iraq during that period of time. And it was also the beginning of the war on the American people. And this is when we had the Branch Davidians and the disaster at Waco. We had the anti-terrorism bill starting to be put into place. You could see now that the 90s also have their version of a war. I mean, it's going on. It's pretty widespread. Whatever's happening in the Balkans and Iraq, and also the beginning of conflict here in the U.S. And where are we now? We're still kind of rooting around those areas. Anyway, we'll look at the outer planets, but I'm really specifically really interested in this time, the Gilded Age, the background that you're seeing here as my virtual background. And I'll throw a few more backgrounds up there over the course of the rest of tonight's show. Of course, we'll have the chart of the moment, which we always do and look at. And what else? Oh, we're going to look at Vitalik Buteran's chart, which is quite interesting. And some people had asked me to take a look at it. We just did this great crypto webinar over the weekend with my buddy Masaki, and Buteran's name came up more than once. And Masaki was telling me how he's an Aquarian and how he really fits this Aquarian kind of model of the world that we're moving into. And I would say that's 100%. And he's got a stellium in Aquarius. So we're going to look at how do you do that? It's been a long day, big weekend, 2 webinars. So I get to yawn. It has nothing to do with you. Trust me, you guys are great. So we're going to look at Buteran's chart, and I really do think it's an important chart. And he's got Mars, I think, at 2 degrees Aquarius, which means that the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which took place in December of 2020, we're almost there now. We're almost a year into the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of December 21st, 2020. Pretty much spot on, bang on Buteran's Mars, which means that he's going to be a very important and dynamic force in a very Aquarian way over the next 20 years. And one could make a case as we go through this idea of a reset, because this is where we are now. We're clearly in new Schwabian territory. And I remember, when was that? I think it was I think it might have been in the summer of 2020. It might have been in the summer of 2020. Maybe June, July of 2020. I remember it was in my my old place, and I was in the backyard and I was doing a show, and I remember coming across Klaus Schwab's press release from the World Economic Forum, And he was talking about the twin reset. That's what he called it at the time, the twin reset. And I really didn't have a lot of background on Schwab. He wasn't somebody I paid a lot of attention to. Obviously, I probably should have been. But he wrote this big thesis about the twin reset, and that really grabbed my attention. Because number one, we're talking Gemini, and we know what a significant role Gemini plays in this world of duality that we're in. Number two, the true node had just really entered into Gemini. It was like it was really taken off. We were in the summer of Floyd, which wasn't really a lot of fun for anybody, and a lot of fractalization, and social atoms were just being completely split into a million pieces. So it really grabbed my attention. I'm like, okay, here we go. We've got reset language. We have the twin reset, which is what he called it. And the reason why he called it a twin reset is because he was looking at it from a monetary reset, but also a reset that was connected to technology and a new social order. So this is what he was referring to. And I remember, doing my best Klaus Schwab impersonation. And I didn't even know who the fuck he was. But I started reading it in that kind of arch villain German accent. And little did I know how close I was in terms of actually copping his voice. So that really grabbed me. And I started to really understand, because we'd already started to look at the Tartarian stuff. And I think I might have even done a show or two based on some of the charts we're looking at. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, all right, here we go. They're doing it again. They're doing their occult magic again. They're going to change everything. We're in this changeover period. And we're witnessing it, straight up. And we're witnessing the evaporation and the erasure of history, right? That's taking place right before our very eyes. We might even be looking, again, if we go back in time, let's just take a little trip back in time. Let's go back to 1700s, maybe the late 1700s, early 1800s, maybe even mid 1700s. Let's just go back that far. And there were people on this continent here in North America, and perhaps even other continents, but let's just say here for the sake of argument. And those people were wiped out. We have really no historical record of them, and that we could say, well, maybe they were giants, or maybe they had red hair, or maybe they were this melange of really diverse people. We don't know. We don't know. We have clues. We have people that like Piltdown Man, people that were, buried in certain places that look a certain way that shouldn't be in those places. You can even go to China and look at this group of mummies that they found in Western China that all are fair skinned with red hair. And they really predate kind of any other Chinese burial grounds, which is really a trip, right? And then we could even see images of Olmecs, supposedly Olmec Indians in Central America, and they look like Forrest Whitaker. So it's, what's going on here? They not only have they erased, like, theoretically, one, let's just say it's giants with red hair. Not only have they erased the giants with the red hair, but they've erased a lot of other characters and a lot of other people. And so out of that epoch and period, we have the new people, which, again, theoretically, most of us are a part of, right? So that's already happening now. Like, that is happening. And it's happening genetically through social engineering. And you can see where, and again, I'm not here to denigrate anybody. You have to understand, every now and then I'll talk some shit about somebody or something that I think is ridiculous, but I'm not here to denigrate anybody. So when I talk about something, it's not because I'm a card carrying KKK member. It's really just because I'm noticing certain portions of so-called reality. And so what we see at every single turn in commercials now is we see mixed race couples. I mean, that is de rigueur. Or we see couples that are same-sex couples, or we see couples where you're looking at somebody you think is a really good-looking woman or a really nicely attired metrosexual dude, and they are neither, right? So this is where advertising is going. And so there's the social engineering component of this. And really what they're doing is they're doing everything in their power to normalize these things so that ultimately the face of humanity changes. They want it to change. And again, I'm not here to pick any sides. I'm just an observer, right? I am just an observer as to what's happening, like every single one of you. I just happen to have a YouTube channel and put my observations out there and try to connect them back to things like astrology. And what we see as a result of mixed race marriages, a great deal of mixed race people. And I've been talking about this for a while now. And again, no denigration here, but I've been talking about it for a while. And I've always used this example of somebody who I dated who was mixed race. And when she was at a white school, she got into fights all the time because she was too black. So they decided to change her situation and enroll her in an all black school. She was too light at an all black school. And it was like, what do you do with something like that? I mean, who are you? What's your identity? It's got to be really weird. It's just got to be difficult to locate who you are in space and time. I mean, you would literally have to just say, hey, I'm a human. And we're all humans, right? But we also have these group affiliations. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing this social engineering that's taking place. And Jason Whitlock talks about this, and he talks about how the people that seem to be the ones that cause the most trouble and friction are the ones that are a byproduct of mixed race marriages. And he went right down the line, right? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is not because I'm here to like denigrate anybody who's mixed race, but if you look at the social pattern, that a lot of times, and again, not with every case, that this is a group of people who are really struggling with their identity. And so therefore, they're more malleable. If they're looking for an identity and they don't really know who they are, that's not to say that you can't know who you are. Everybody has the potential of knowing exactly who they are. And who they are is a byproduct of God, right? We're all byproduct of God. And we're all byproduct of something that's far greater than we can even begin to articulate. And that's everybody who, of course, is not an NPC or doesn't happen to have a soul, which I don't believe everybody has a soul, by the way. There's a lot of controversial territory here at the beginning. But again, I'm not saying that those people can't know who they are, because they can, obviously. But if you create a group of people, theoretically, through social engineering, normalization, and then program, what happens? Well, then you have a group of people who have no connection to the past, right? No connection to, and I've talked about this before, right? And if you don't have a connection to your past, in a lot of ways, you have no connection to your present, and you don't know where you're going in the future. So you have a group of people that, again, right, they don't necessarily have any identification. If they do, I'll tell you who's really good at this, by the way, is Royce White. I'd love to have Royce White on my daily show, because Royce White is a badass. Royce White knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly where he comes from. And there's no equivocation about like Royce White's trajectory in life, right? So you can know who you are, but by and large, a lot of people, and I'm telling you too, even people who are theoretically, more predominantly one thing than the other, they're not always even guaranteed to know who the fuck they are. Okay. So I want to put that on the table as well. But it's harder, right? It is just harder. And then what happens is that you have a group of people now who can be led. They can be led, they can be directed, and they can create an entirely new history for this group of people. And again, we saw that with this last, well, we didn't see it, but we can look backwards and say, you know what? There are a bunch of people and a bunch of stories that got left out of this last reset. And if you go down through Flat Earth British, Martin's channel, I mean, Christ, you'll see people that they're not even people that we would recognize as people. I mean, very different kinds of beings, really small beings, really tall beings, like giants, beings that look, somewhat chimeric in some ways. There's a whole series of illustrations of people that don't have any heads. I mean, maybe this is all symbolic, right? But there's a lot of pictures where people are just walking around with heads on their chest. So again, I mean, what kind of world were we living in? And every now and then we'll find remnants, I think, genetic remnants of people who have like 6 toes or 6 fingers or something unusual. Like there are also, I believe, images of people, women who have like multiple breasts, like 4 breasts. So we're really getting out there. But again, what I'm trying to stress is that there's a prehistory and there's a whole group of people we don't know about. And again, the most common would be like the red-haired giants, or the red-haired species in Asia, or the Olmecs running around Central America. And we think of Central America as just being Mesoamerican. Probably not the case, right? So here we are, we're in the midst of this reset and we can see it happening right before our very eyes. We're in this process. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back in time. We're going to look at what was going on with what I think is the most modern version of the reset. And we'll look at, as it moves forward, we'll look at 2 periods, 3 periods predominantly, where Uranus is in Taurus. And in 1852, when theoretically all this stuff just starts rolling right downhill, Uranus is in Taurus. Pluto is also in Taurus. And then the next time Uranus is in Taurus is the 1920s, which is a very, very, very important time. Actually, it's 1935. Uranus goes into Taurus. So the run up to Uranus in Taurus in 1935 is really important, right? So we have Uranus in Aries during that period. Now, if we go back and look at the turn of the century, well, even like later in the 1850s, right? The 1850s, we're going from Uranus in Aries, Uranus in Taurus, and I think it's, what is it? I got to go back and look at it. It's when Pierce is assassinated at the Buffalo World's Fair, which is that's an important assassination, by the way. Very important. That's almost a ritual. It's almost a ritual killing. He's a president, Franklin Pierce, who gets killed at one of these World's Fairs. Right. And to me, it's like, that's it, right? They're done. They're done. Pierce is the kill, just like how we saw Kennedy with the Kill King ritual in 1963. Pierce is one of those Kill King rituals. It's like, he's done. That world is done. It's over. And the robber barons now are about to take possession of a lot of this technology, and they're going to create the second industrial revolution. So we're going to look at a lot of that tonight, which I think is going to be a lot of fun, and move through time and see some of these changes that take place, and how Uranus plays a role, in Uranus and Taurus, and also Uranus in general, Uranus and Pluto in tandem, these 2 major outer planets where change comes to the realm that we're living in. And yeah, I think we got a roadmap. We got a roadmap. So, all right, let's see who's in chat. By the way, thanks for being here tonight. Let's see who we got going. Let's see what's happening. Let me go over here and make this smaller. Yeah. There we go. And let's see who's in here. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Okay, you have no sound. No sound, no sound. You got it? No sound. Yeah, there you go. All right, so who do we have? Susie Gemini, Deanna M, Tinfoil Tierra, the Kraken, who's been released. What's going on, Kraken? PB, Wendy Quintana, JJ. Let's see. That was a good jam, too. Lizzie Brown, no sound. Maybe there's a series of rests. Golden, I'm so glad you guys are here tonight. Oh, did you get it? I hope you got it. If not, I'll play it at the end. Your place is looking great. I know, right? This is how people used to live. Think about this. This is how they used to live. This was the adornment of how. I mean, okay, so is this how Louis lived? Is this in the Chamber of Versailles, or was this more or less like how people might have lived during this time? When we look at these buildings, so we see the outer splendor of the buildings. Why wouldn't the inner splendor of the buildings match? You know what I think is a really great case, by the way? If you want to see modern Tartaria, inside is Hearst Castle in California. Nobody's really done a video on Hearst Castle. And I'm waiting for, maybe they have, I don't know. There's so many Tartarian researchers out there. Let's see, who else do we have? Let's see, just kind of froze. It did froze. All right. We have I miss Nick Plur. What's going on? I miss Nick Plur. Gigi Abby Lynn. My man, Thomas Jordan. We got Ryan in the house too. What's going on? Kelly B. You see, there's DJ MC. Merry Christmas, Michael, to you and your family. Upgraded the office. I know, right? 10 Dragon 14. Good to see you. Swami Mummy. Swami Mommy. Hi, Swami Mommy. WC at Mar-a-Lago. Oh, fuck, that's funny. I know, right? Yeah, Trump Palace now. Trump Tower. Now that we know a little bit about Tartaria, it kind of makes Trump Tower make sense, doesn't it? It kind of makes it kind of come together in ways that isn't just really kind of gauche Liberace. All right, let's see. I know you thought Trump. I know, right? Isn't that true? Vanderbilt room to celebrate Anderson Cooper becoming the alpha at CNN. Oh, right. He is the alpha now. Anderson Cooper. Yeah, the Vanderbilt family. His stepdad was Bobby Short, who played piano. He was a longtime fixture at a I forget what hotel he played at in New York, but he was one of these lounge guys. One of these tinkly, smiley lounge guys. He was a glory of Vanderbilt and the Vanderbilts brought over one of the obelisks from Egypt as well. Provocateur Astrology, what's going on? Greetings to you from the Hill Country in Texas. There she is, Joni S., the lovely and talented one. Marcus looks like my place, except for the gold, the wainscot involved is a decor. I love it. All right, good. Well, you've got the foundation going. Cheryl Loshiava, what's going on? Cheryl, good to see you at the webinar. Christy, I hope you made the webinar. I know you're on the list. I sent you the invite. The recording will be going out to the attendees after the show. Mazumini, what's going on? Good to see you. Let's see, who else do we have here? The Experimental Elemental. Love that name. JJ. Good evening, JJ. Tinfoil Tiara. She's around. There she is. CC Jones, the lovely Fran. Fender Bender. Freddie Fender Bender. Ayurveda Astrology. We've got a lot of Astro heads in here tonight. Cool. Welcome. Speaking of Astro heads, there's my man, the Shadow Man, Benito Diaz. He's here. Let's see. Whimsical Farm Girl checking in. And there's Ryan officially. War on American Ruby Ridge and Waco. Absolutely. Absolutely. The 90s we were in a light touch version of the World War in the 90s. Let's see, who else do we have? Chris and Steve. Oh, Steve, man, I'm going down the Tartarian rabbit hole tonight. Either close, put your fingers in your ears or put your fingers on your nose. I promise I'll try my best not to corrupt Greece and Rome too much tonight. Who else do we have? We got Squirrel. What's going on? Hey, congratulations. I think Squirrel is I think Squirrel's pregnant, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I heard through the grapevine. Sheila Sampson, Wisconsin. There is my man Steve, Thor by there. Donna Bellinger, Ryan. Anne Rice is one of my favorite authors. That's right. Anne Rice passed away. Was she 80? Man, she made a really interesting transformation, didn't she? She went from writing about vampires to becoming a born again Christian. Finding the gospel. Really interesting journey. I think Nish is going to come on the show. We're gonna talk a lot about that. Is the recording of the webinar available? Yes, it is. I just need to talk with Misaki and work a few things out. We'll see if we can make that public. So stay tuned with that. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Jolie. Hey, what's going on, Jolie? We need to connect. Hope you're doing okay. Yeah, I know. People dig the background. It's a hit tonight. I feel like I underdressed for it. After I threw it up there, I'm like, shit, I'm wearing this blue shirt that I wore last week and I'm wearing a cap. Maybe I should have worn something a little bit more fitting for this background. I just received my DNA analysis and am completely shocked. Oh, well, tell more. Jolie, 23andMe makes everyone Jewish. They didn't make my mother Jewish. My mother was all Irish with Iberian. She had Irish and Iberian. We get into the Iberian thing a little bit, maybe not tonight. Let's see. Who else we have? That's Ida Bambingo. I like that. Gas 1123. Oh shit. My 5-week-old daughter is in the hospital with RSV. She's doing please send good vibes. All right. We'll say a little prayer for your 5-week-old daughter. Man, that's a big thing. Anytime people step foot in hospitals now, it's really a roll of the dice. I have a good friend of the show, Lynette, who I didn't talk about, and I wanted to. She got hospitalized. I don't want to get into what she had, but she actually got really great care. I mean, they didn't force her to get a jab. I think she might have had to take a test, and she was in the hospital for probably a good week, and they kind of got her right, and now she's out, and she's a Sagittarius, though. So, Sagittarians land on their feet. So every now and then, you can still get good hospital care. Unfortunately, sometimes it winds up being like the hospital in Jacob's Ladder. And that's the last place you want to be. All right, we'll say a little prayer for her tonight. Okay, who else do we have here? Wendy Ader, what's going on? We just started. Okay, so we're going into Jolie's DNA. Is she going to do the true reveal here? Let's see who's watching commercials. I'm not, but every now and then a few run across my screen. Let's see. Bonnie Willow, what's going on, Bonnie? We were just listening to videos about Tartaria today, and then turn this on, and voila. Yes, you can't escape it. You can't escape the past that's racing to catch up with us. Let's see. Who else do we have here? I'll pick sides. Okay. I like it. It's beautiful wherever you're at. Okay, so look at Jolie. She's laying it out. I have three kinds of Chinese, Japanese, 750 EAD, Peruvian, Colombian, Gujarati, Bengali, and Punjabi. Wow. That's pretty exotic. That is pretty damn exotic. If you could apply for a passport based on your 23andMe, you'd be a global citizen. Very cool. We've got we have two Jolies in the house. We have Jolie Wells and Jolie Evans. And look, they're posting back to back right there. It's a little Gemini magic. Hey, speaking of Gemini magic, Miss Gemini Rising, Emily Moore is here with us. Lana Anderson. What's going on, Lana? Look at that. We got the two, and then we have Susie Gemini commenting on the two Jolies and Emily, who's a Gemini Rising. We're having a Gemini like gangbang here. Let's see, who else do we have? Look at this. Steve and Chris Tartarian propaganda. Mazuming says, I'm half Japanese and Jewish with some Dutch. What would you call that? Dupanese? Maybe Dupanese. Noreen Helphand, who is Japanese and Jewish, she calls herself Jupanese. That's her phrase, not mine. So you throw the Dutch in with yours and you're Dupanese. It's kind of like Cablinasian. Let's see, who else do we have? Nivad 17. Oh, we haven't even really started. We're just letting people show up here, and I get to riff with you guys. Jolie says, always thought I was an Irish as Paddy's pig. I am 38% British Isles, some Swiss, 10% Tuscan. I knew about the UK heritage, but the rest blows me away. Wow, that's kind of cool. You really are the consecration of. You got Tartaria living inside of you. Those are all Tartarian places. You are our honorary citizen of Tartaria this evening. Let's see. Cheryl says, I work in areas of Baltimore that is surrounded by Tartarian buildings. It amazes me every day. Yeah, did you take our friends here from the Hill Country on a little Tartarian excursion? I think you did. Speaking of our friends, I got to talk about Kimberly's website here in a second. All right, who else do we have? Let's see. I guess they had vaccine damage then too. They might have the pressure. So if you look at Edward Jenner and where Edward Jenner was on the timeline, he's pre-reset, and they're pushing that that cowpox vaccine in a really big way. So you may be more right than you're not there, or more on the money than you might realize. Whose reset is it now? I'm asking myself. Well, the reset now seems to be the eradication, and I say this in all objectivity. The reset right now seems to be the eradication of first what I would call white Christians, although they're not the only ones now that are part of this reset, because now we have these X factors that are coming in. Of course, the X factors are the carjack. So there are people now who are aligned of a certain spirit that are doing everything in their power to stay out of the carjack or not get carjacked. And to me, this is a more of a spiritual reset. It definitely feels like a spiritual reset. And when I say spiritual, I'm talking about sort of vibrationally, that there are people that are vibrationally being targeted here. And it doesn't really have to do in a lot of ways with your genetics, although I think some of it probably does play a role. At the end of the day, if you resist, and it doesn't matter what your skin tone is. There is, I believe, a resistance gene that certain people have, and other people may not have it as much. Let's put it that way. And that doesn't, and I've seen that across the board with any number of people. So ultimately, the reset, I believe, is about humanity. Right? This is the reset of eradicating humanity and creating a new species based on transhumanism. And so we're watching transhumanism come into vogue, and it's coming into vogue first through transgenderism and the acceptance of transgenderism, and then eventually becoming biologically and technologically modified to be transhuman. And all of us are transhuman to some degree. Like if you have fillings in your teeth, or you have a screw and a wire in your arm, you're kind of a transhuman on a certain fundamental level, right? I mean, we've been modified here and there. Sometimes the foods we've eaten that are genetically modified might have genetically modified us ways in which we don't even know or can't perceive at this point in time. So I'm not saying that all of a sudden we're just dealing with a bunch of, transhuman people. I mean, we have had degrees of being modified over time. There are degrees, and then there are like giant leaps, and we're in this giant leap period, and that's where it's going. So ultimately, the reset is about eradicating the human as we know it, and the human who hasn't really even, in my estimation, gotten the chance to really flower and really understand its true place in the electric universe. I think that's really what it's about, because we're getting to this point now where we're accumulating this knowledge. We're starting to break down a lot of the symbolic language. We're starting to see these cyclical epochs and eras, and we're looking back. We're saying, "My God, that looks like some incredible technology here." And what were they doing, and who were they, and what were they capable of? What kind of world did they live in? So some of us are having this almost deja vu, as if we've been here before, and maybe we have. And I think that's really why we're at this critical phase. Because, and I heard a really interesting theory. Like there are some pretty wild, like what do they call them? Timeline shifters of TikTok. Like there's these crazy young people, mostly girls, who like shift timelines on TikTok by going in their shower and going from hot water to cold water and hot water to cold water. Like they're moving in and out of timeless. Anyway, I read on one of these, I think it was there, or maybe Twitter, where somebody was talking about how we have not been able to move past 2012. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Like that they have been pulling the strings on time since 2012. Like we're stuck somewhere between 12/21, 2012. Oh, what day is it today? Well, it's 12/12/21. It's 12/12/21. Kind of interesting, right? So a lot of the Mandela effect and a lot of this shit that we're seeing seems to be connected to some form of like larger macro manipulation of the timeline, so that we're being held back, and that we can't necessarily break through and make this leap. And so therefore they're trying to stall that and then create this different timeline, or this reset that Klaus Schwab has been peddling. By the way, who's even interested in that shit? I mean, who looks at Klaus Schwab? I mean, is there anybody out there who watches Klaus Schwab and is fucking inspired? Like, is there anybody out there who really does that? Do you think Klaus Schwab has fucking groupies besides Leonardo DiCaprio? I'd be hard pressed. I'd be really hard. The only way I could see Klaus Schwab having groupies of any sort are a bunch of like Island of Misfit Toys who have absolutely no father figure or no grandfather figure in their life. And they're looking around and they're trying to find a group that they can hang out with, assimilate into. And then they have like this jolly old freak, Nick, who's telling them about how great the future will be. And some of them might have some experience in coding. Maybe they've got some interest in the environment, and this prune of a super villain might be inspiring to them. I just don't get it. I mean, and I don't get it. Elon Musk is a way more inspiring version of Klaus Schwab. And don't count him out for playing that role, by the way. Don't count him out. Because if Elon Musk has moved into the Klaus Schwab role, well, how many people you think, oh man, I love Elon Musk, man. Oh yeah, man, you go, Elon, go. Yeah, hook me up to that Starlink, brother. Yeah, man, let's go. Let's do this. Jack me in. Would they do that for Klaus Schwab? No, they wouldn't do that for Klaus Schwab. And I've said for a long time that I think Elon Musk is really being prepped to be the new Bill Gates. That's my theory of Elon Musk. But nobody's fucking buying Klaus Schwab. He's not inspirational at all. Right. But that's the plan, right? This is the great reset. Roll our eyes. Here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to see somebody fucking take that guy on and just say, wow, we've got a different version of a great reset. Really. And put out a bunch of videos and make them look really fucking spiff and talk about things like anti-grav technology, talk about things like maglev trains, talk about things like recharging our atmosphere so that it's more ionically potent for optimal health versus raping the atmosphere of CO2, which guess what? We need some CO2 in our atmosphere and they don't want any CO2. What's that all about, right? I'd love somebody to play that role. See that? Well, who knows? Maybe that's what the Antichrist will do. Klaus Schwab needs a little competition. That's all I'm saying. And I think Elon Musk might be a little lightweight for that. All right, who else do we have here? Hey, Laura, what's going on from New York City, where you've got your two crazy batshit leaders there? J&P Love in the house. What's going on, Jacqueline? I think Klaus Fauci Gates should be drawn and quartered on a global pay-per-view, $5.99, so everyone can afford it. Proceeds go to vaccine. That might be the idea of the year. That might, if I could put if this was StreamYard, I'd put your chat up on. I'd put your comment up on StreamYard. Absolutely. Did I look at Elon's chart? Yeah, well, you should probably say flake like they do. You should just probably take the L out of the flake. Fake. Fake is probably the word for Elon. I mean, come on now. Elon Musk grew up in a family. He grew up in a family that is a very, very wealthy mining family from South Africa, right? That's where he got his bones. He got his bones because his parents were freaking gold barons from South Africa, okay? He's not a self-made man. He's a member of the club. He's a member of the club with some good hair. By the way, I follow this person on Twitter. What's her name? Omerta. She has the best fucking Elon Musk memes. Like they're like next level memes. She does stuff with animation. It's like she's made this weird kind of, but very interesting. Sort of looking for cottage industry out of satirizing Elon Musk. It's kind of amazing. Maybe I'll go to her Twitter page. But before I do, let's get on with the shoe. I've been talking for about an hour now. People are probably saying, when the fuck is this guy going to talk about astrology? Fuck. He says he's got an astrology channel. Okay, let me do this. Let me just promote my friends here because they're such cool people. And they do really good work. And we just had dinner with them last night. So here we go. So if you are still looking for a Christmas gift for people and you're looking for something that has an astrological bit of a bent to it, let me show you where to go. So this is Artemis Designs, and it is my friend Kimberly and her husband Ibrahim. And so they have this really cool line of jewelry, and they have astrological jewelry. They have a whole horoscope collection here, and you can see where you can get earrings and pendants and rings for every sign. So if you have somebody in your life that is really into astrology, and these are really affordable. You know, you've got gold Larry necklace. We're talking about $60. This is not going to break your bank. So this is the horoscope collection right here. They also have a tarot collection. If you're into tarot, they have tarot earrings. They have a spinning ring. Apparently, look at this. I didn't know this one. They've got a spinning ring. It is a fidget ring, the sun and the moon. So I guess you can almost like flip a coin with it or something, right? That's pretty cool. There you go. Item ships for free inside the USA. So there's the horoscope collection, and then there is the Renaissance collection. So they have some other stuff here in the Renaissance collection. Let's see, what do we have? We have the pirate collection. So if you're into the pirate thing, or you're into the Valhalla world, we got a little bit of that. Natural world for your pagan besties. Renaissance, got some Renaissance inspired stuff. I don't. They've got one with the griffin in here somewhere, I think. Is that it here? And then what else do we have? We have the Exotica collection. Let's look at Exotica. Oh, this is where they have the yes. So they also do things with alligator leather. By the way, the alligator leather is like totally sourced in a way that is humane, and essentially the alligators are not killed for the leather, right? They strip the leather off the alligators that have been killed for whatever reason. So it's not like they've got alligator poachers running around the bayous trying to get this stuff. So if that means anything to you, so we have little alligator pendants, and for the reptilian, if you've got some reptilian relatives, everybody's got a couple of reptilian relatives, don't they? Here's how you can honor their inner reptilian right here with got a nice little arrowhead, Larry. That's pretty cool. Got some earrings, alligator. The bracelets, I think, are really fucking awesome. You got silver with the alligator leather. That's a badass bracelet right there. Oh, speaking of badass, look who's here. Anyway, if you're interested, you can still get this stuff for Christmas if you want a Christmas gift. And I think after like Monday or Tuesday, if you get your order in, of course, you'll pay more for shipping. But I think there's still plenty of time. We've got, 10 days, 11 days. Here's Jasper, the astrological cat, joining us. Jasper, what do you have to say to people? Jasper made a new friend today. He connected with outside Max. That was an interesting moment. Jasper broke through the dome. He broke through the ice wall, and he was on the porch. It's like, oh, there's other lands out here. Yeah, you broke through the ice wall, didn't you? Yeah. And he had a connection with Max, who's the farm cat out here. So who knows? Maybe it's the start of a bromance. All right, let's do a little prayer here. And let's see. Let's go back and let's say a little prayer for is it Gas 1132? What's your daughter's name? Can we just get her first name? Can we just Musk is actually balding prematurely. Oh man, he's got the best nibs in the world. What's your daughter's name? Can we just get her first name so we can just include her in the prayer here? If not, we'll just my divine right to hybridize the reptilian and mammalian being. That's your right. If you want to do that, you just go ahead and do that. Let's see. All right, so we'll say a general prayer for Nina. Okay, thank you. All right. So let's say a little prayer. Let's see if I can set this up a little bit. Okay. All right. Dear blessed holy Mother, Father God, of the great central sun within the universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel, and all the great avatars and beings who have walked amongst us and channeled the infinite truth and wisdom and love that is available to each and every one of us. We ask with all due reverence and love that you look over and protect little Nina in the hospital tonight, and that you look after and protect all the little Ninas and Ninos on the planet who really need our love and protection now, as the voracious state and sacrificers of our innocence are lusting after them with each and every day. So may we all protect them in the best way that we can, and may we affirm and decree that you and your wisdom and your love are looking after them in this moment. And even those who have become ill or fallen due to something that was completely outside of their control, we ask that miracles may occur in their life and that they may return to form, the form they were before their form is interrupted by something from outside of themselves that caused them such distress and such pain and such suffering. In you, we know all things are possible. In you, we know we may do the things of the great master and more, as it was said. All right. You ready, Jasper? Let's go. Let's rock. Let's look at the chart of the moment, and we'll get into it right about now. Right about now. Let's see what we got here. Oh, so there are a couple things from last week before I do this. All right. I said Poland had never really been a country. I caught a lot of heat from that. And I want to preface that because there were times where Poland really was not a country. However, it did exist. So I was a little, how do I say this? I was not articulate as enough as I could have been, because there was something called the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that existed for quite a long time. But the nation state, that's what I was really referring to, as Poland didn't really exist as we know it until after World War I. That is not to say that Poland didn't exist. Of course it did. But even the designation of Poland wasn't quite the way that we recognized it post World War I. It was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and a very, very successful Commonwealth as well, by the way. And then the other thing that I made a mistake on is I talked about Slovenia, and I said the Baltic. I meant to say the Balkans. Okay. So I just want to make that clear. I know Slovenia is not in the Baltic, but it is part of the Balkans. Okay. I think I got it. And if you're from Slovenia or you're from Poland and I offended you, well, everybody makes a mistake every now and then, or at least a mistake in not being as articulate as we could be. All right. I almost said something really flip, but I didn't do it. It's probably better that I didn't. Okay, let's go home. Let's go home. We're done with this place. Let's go home. You guys ready to go home? All right, we're done. Okay. All right, chart of the moment. What do we got here? Let me just change this. I don't know why this isn't. Oh, I know why. Let me just change this a little bit here. Jasper, how'd you like it on the other side of the ice wall? Was that cool? He broke out of the Truman Show. You had a very interesting reaction to that too. You were wild. You were really wild. It was like you were supercharged. Okay. Let's see what we got. All right. So we're just going to look at. We're just going to look at sort of the major aspects here. Okay. All right. We got Moon and Aries. I could definitely feel that Moon and Aries last night. Let me just tell you. Had a Moon and Aries moment. And it's just coming off of a conjunction with Chiron. Be a really interesting discussion to have with people. Like, what was your reality like over the last, say, 48 hours? Did you experience any healing over the 48 hours? And rapid, because Aries is very quick. Were you able to kind of surmount some gap in your healing process very quickly? Because I mean, if you look at it, the Moon Chiron conjunction over the weekend. So the Moon would have been at starting on Friday. What about probably just coming into Aries or just leaving Taurus? So yesterday would have had more of that conjunction. Just think back in yesterday. Like, how were you feeling yesterday? Were you able to have some level of rapid emotion? Because Aries is fast. Aries is very quick, right? It's now. Did you make any emotional decisions? And Aries is not intellectual, by the way. You don't process intellectually through Aries. It does not happen. That doesn't mean that Aries people aren't smart. Some Aries people are really fucking smart, but that's not how it gets processed. It bypasses the intellect. So yesterday we would have been dealing with pure instinct, pure emotion, and I would say quickly and rapidly healing any kind of wound or gap that you might have around certain things, right? Like when we think of Aries, we think of being self-sufficient or independent, or we think of masculine energy. And here in Chiron, we've been really dealing with the wounding of the masculine and the reordering of the masculine. I mean, wounding to the effect of surgically removing genitalia. I mean, that's Chiron and Aries. And Aries does rule things like blades and scalpels, and it is involved in surgery. So, we've seen with Chiron and Aries, the wounding, I mean, the literal wounding of the male here. So with the moon conjunct Chiron, you know, on an energetic level, not just from a biological level, but as a woman, were you over the last 48 hours a bit more forward, confident? Were you making choices based on processing your emotion very quickly and having some kind of emotional authority? Question mark. As a man, were you doing the same thing? Um, it's it's very interesting, right? It's like things happen quick, you move quick. So, all right, I'll give you a little insight into my world. So today, it's an Aries thing. All right, I went to the gun show in Fredericksburg. So I was looking for a very specific thing. And I couldn't find that thing that I was looking for, but I found something else, and I moved on it really quickly. And by the way, it was not a firearm, but it has to do with protection. Because what do we think of with the moon? We think of the moon as being protective, right? The mother is being protective. So I actually had a moon Aries Chiron moment earlier today, now that I look back on it. But we've had 48 hours. We did a crypto webinar, myself and Masaki, starting yesterday and today. And this moon Chiron conjunction would have fallen right into that webinar, right? Like, how are you going to, have a hedge, if the shit hits the fan monetarily? And everybody, and look, there's hundreds of different opinions on cryptocurrency, hundreds of them, right? Like, some people are really gung ho and, XRP to the moon, and other people are like, man, this shit is, the number of the beast, and we're building the beast system, and, can't we just trade acorns, right? I mean, those are the extremes. So I'm not clearly, this is a beast model. All right. I'm not denying that, right? They're putting these things together, but I'm also not really ready to go back and trade acorns unless acorns are really fucking valuable, like tulips, in which case I'll be a big acorn trader. I'm not a big crypto guy. I have, a little bit, but I do believe that it's a hedge. It is part of a hedge system that everybody needs. You need hedges, whatever those hedges are. For some people, it's gold, silver combination. Some people, it's seed banks. Some people, it's bullets, whatever. Right. So it's crypto is another kind of option for the hedge. So this weekend we did this webinar, and I feel like it's really right in that moon conjunction with Chiron, because we're looking at an unstable environment. Chiron in Aries is kind of unstable. I mean, it's very volatile. Because Aries is a cardinal sign, and Chiron in Aries is like cardinality that doesn't really know how to resolve itself, right? So usually, what happens with Chiron, in my estimation, with Chiron, just in general, with people, is that most people don't want to deal with their Chiron, and they avoid it like the plague, because Chiron forces us to deal with parts of ourselves that we're not real comfortable with. The wound, or the vulnerability, which is almost always associated with Chiron, but also is our greatest healing. Our greatest healing potential is also theoretically our greatest weakness with Chiron. So a lot of people don't like to take risks with Chiron. They don't want to confront it directly. So most people will go into the Saturnian side of Chiron, because Chiron is, again, theoretically between Uranus and Saturn. So they'll be Saturnian, and they'll just, check the box, 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 go to this is before now. Now we're in a different part of the galaxy now. So it's like, instead of just getting going to the right school and getting the right job and marrying the right woman into the right family and moving to the right neighborhood and getting your kids into the right school and doing it all over again, right? That's very Saturnian. Everybody that's very Saturnian with Chiron has to do with
Uranus. They have to deal with chaos. They have to deal with disorder at some point in their lives. Now, there are certain people who are very Uranian. I myself was very Uranian growing up, and I did not do any of those things. In fact, I was always on the other side of that equation. I was always, getting in trouble and breaking rules and just doing whatever the fuck I wanted for the most part. And I had a lot of fun. But I really lacked a lot of structure. So I've had to move more towards Saturn as I've gotten older. And other people who have been Saturnian, their job is to move more towards Uranus. But a lot of people won't even look at Chiron. They won't want to deal with Chiron. So what happens is they go to the other side or the other sign. So let's say, for instance, you have, I don't know, Chiron in Pisces. Let's see if Chiron in Pisces. So instead of dealing with Chiron and Pisces, which can be pretty messy and pretty like psychic and pretty kind of crazy at times, or pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Boundaryless, right? Instead of dealing with that, you'll go to the other sign. You'll go to Virgo, and Virgo will be all about order. And so a person who has like Chiron and an extremely vulnerable, psychically, spiritually, and emotionally vulnerable Chiron in Pisces, they'll go to the Virgo opposition and they'll try to find out how to deal with that there. But it doesn't really work. You'll learn something, but you won't learn enough to firmly understand and master Chiron, which is what we're all theoretically here to do. Is to when you get to 50 in the Chiron return, that's exactly what happens. So, here we are now with this Chiron in Aries, and we're dealing with it culturally. And we've just had the moon crossing over Chiron this weekend. And it's an interesting place now for the moon to be in sextile with Saturn, because a lot of those changes, if you were able to face yourself kind of emotionally over the weekend, and even like doing the crypto webinar, it's like, geez, well, I don't know what the fuck to do. Am I going to be safe? How am I going to be safe? It's a very lunar thing. The moon is into safety. Okay. That's how the moon operates. So we had people that were going, okay, well, let me check this out. Let me see how I can figure this out. But you didn't have to be in the webinar. I mean, this was part of what was going on over the weekend. So now we have this moon, which has been in sextile with Saturn, and really starting probably about around noon today, or a little bit maybe around 10 a.m. today, that those changes become integrated. So whatever you were going through, like Friday, Saturday, and lead up to this moon Chiron conjunction, you get to integrate those changes to become more solid. It's a really interesting process here. Just kind of in a 72-hour level. You look at somebody like Jolie, who's looking into her genetics and her past with the moon. A lot of times they go through the mother, by the way, unless you request both mother, father. And being kind of shocked at your roots, because the moon is your roots. So I don't know when you found that out, Jolie, but it's kind of interesting. And now here we are, we're talking about it, and we've got this sextile with Saturn. So what does that do for you? How does that change you? Does it give you a sense of grounding, right? Because now you're like, wow, look at me, I've got all this really interesting genetic code inside of me. I'm a lot more diverse and varied and eclectic than I ever thought I was. I mean, it's got to kind of shift your identity on some level in a positive way. And then we also have the moon moving into trine with the sun tomorrow, which is great. So I feel like we're starting off Monday here with a nice boost. We got a nice boost on Monday. We're coming into the holiday season. Some people are already into Hanukkah. They're lighting candles, and we're coming into the whole Christmas thing. And look, I just got to call it the holiday season. I'll say Christmas to people because it's politically incorrect to say Christmas. But I don't think, me personally, I don't think Jesus was born on December 21st. Some people will say, well, Jesus was never born. That's a whole other discussion, right? Whole other discussion. But if we're going to play in that world, for me, it's 9/11. It's 9/11, but that's okay. I'll roll with the 12/24 because that's how the seasonal stuff works. And I love the fact that we're in Sagittarius season. So we get to be jolly and we get to be wise and sage like, and we get to be forgiving, right? Sagittarius is a sign that has the potential for great forgiveness. It's a beautiful sign. You know, Sagittarius can be bigger than the moment or bigger than other people. You know, that's how Sagittarius works. So, you know, we're in that very generous kind of Sagittarian spirit, which I think is really in alignment with the holidays. And then we move into the winter solstice and we move into Capricorn. And now we're really deep into the heart of Saturnalia. You know, we're into a very, very different kind of relationship with the cosmos and the relationship with this dark time, you know, between really right around the 20th, 21st of December and kind of going through, you know, that period, that week, and coming out, you know, into the first few weeks of January. I feel like Saturnalia really lasts officially until we move into Aquarius, where we have a different kind of light that's beginning to emerge. It's like the cold light of the northern hemisphere is beginning to emerge. So, but it's still a very interesting time. And you know, this, to me, this is the period where we can spread a lot of good cheer and goodwill. And this week really looks great because we've got the moon coming into trine tomorrow with the sun. The sun is in third decan Sagittarius, which puts it in, guess what? The Leo decan. So we're really coming from the heart this week. I think generosity is really the key. Watch out for overdoing it a little bit here on Monday. We got Sun Neptune square, you know, over the first few days of the week. And so the sun will begin to separate from Neptune. Boundaries just dissolve with Sun Neptune squares. So if you're going to do they still have office parties now with COVID? Do they still have those? I haven't been to an office party. Fucking, it's been ages since I've been to an office party. Ages. I'll never forget the one office party I went. So this is back in the .com days. And I thank God this woman doesn't watch my streams. But I was with this woman, and she was a little intense. Okay, little intense. Mars and Scorpio, intense, right? Libra with Mars and Scorpio, very, very attractive woman, right? But man, really short temper, really, really short temper. So we're at this Christmas party, and I was feeling pretty good, you know. And yeah, Sagittarius, man. I got the sun is cruising through my first house, and you know, it was a good time. So I had more than a few cocktails, and I will say this, okay? I will say this, true confession, that there was she was either an intern or receptionist. I really liked this person. She was super cool, super cool, and she's her boyfriend or you know, it's like whatever, you know. I'm not gonna, you know, I never, in fact, I never even really hit on this person. Just, you know, true confession. But I liked this person. They were cool. Right? We talked about astrology. It's like, hey, you're a cool person. So anyway, she's at this party with her boyfriend, and I'm talking to her, and apparently my Libra Scorpio Mars girlfriend didn't like how I was looking at her while I was talking at her. And she lifted her foot and she slammed it on my foot incredibly hard. And then she stormed out of the party. I'm like, it was kind of painful. It's a good thing I was buzzed because it was pretty painful, I have to say. She didn't hold back. Anyway, I hung out for the party way after she left. I let her go. I was like, okay. So then I'm like, oh, well, what am I going to do? Well, how am I going to celebrate the rest of this night? How the fuck am I going to get home? Because I didn't want to drive. So, and I lived in this place called La Honda, which is over the hill from Redwood City. So I took a taxi cab all the way from Redwood City. It was a long ways, but I didn't want to drive and get a ticket or DUI or have something happen. So then I stopped at the local bar. It was a biker bar. So I stopped there. And I'm going to end the story there because it got kind of interesting in a way that I'm just going to end it there. Anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about this. I think it's the Mars Neptune square because I said too much already probably. But that's what happens. I'm sorry, with Sun Neptune square. There it is, right? You gotta have some limits. And I should have had limits with the Libra Mars Scorpio crazed chick long before that. Just watch yourself a little bit. Especially at the beginning of the week. Don't overdo it, right? Don't overdo it. Be generous. Don't overdo it. If you're going to overdo it, be in a place where you're safe. And again, do they even have office? I bet you they have fucking Zoom office parties now in the holidays, don't they? Everybody sits around in Zoom and, drinks and, probably does stupid shit like, expose themselves or something. Wouldn't that be like the equivalent of the stupid shit that people would do at office parties? They would do it on Zoom. So, everybody who's backdooring into Zoom can see. We got Mercury at 29 Sagittarius. So right at the end here and kind of in the wide square with Neptune. Tomorrow it'll be at 0 Capricorn and everybody will be very serious. Very serious. What'd you do this quarter? Did you meet your goals? Did you meet your goals? Did you meet your quota? Let's have a talk. We need to have a talk. We're looking at implementing the vaccine passport here. That's a fucking Mercury and Capricorn conversation right there. I guarantee you people are going to have that conversation tomorrow with Mercury and Capricorn. It's coming. It's coming. And a lot of people who are having those conversations, some of the people that are forcing them to make those decisions with those conversations, a lot of them are having to backtrack. So it's not always a one-way proclamation. Mercury is, what else is Mercury doing? In a sextile with Jupiter. That's interesting. What's interesting is that tomorrow they'll be in different elements. So we have Mercury in an earth sign and Jupiter in an air sign. I think it's interesting, right? It's expansive, a lot of potential with Jupiter at 27 Aquarius, and figuring out how you're going to ground it. Tomorrow is a good map day. Tomorrow and Tuesday, if you got a big idea and you've got this nice sextile, which happens to be two different elements, and one is cardinal, by the way, and the other is fixed. That's an interesting combination. You should pay attention to that. Don't be afraid to look at implementing a bigger idea or a bigger plan starting on Monday or Tuesday, or at the very least mapping it out. I think that's a really interesting sextile. When you see something like this in astrology, it's like, here's a window, here's an opening, use it. Mars finally moving into Sagittarius. Man, I had Mars in my 12th house transiting, and I went to the city council meeting on Monday, and I spoke out, and I could just feel, I was like, I've been holding off, like trying to be provocative with Mars in my 12th house. I didn't want to, I don't want to make too many enemies with Mars in my 12th house. But I went to the city council meeting because, I'd like to support my friends here in my community, because we're standing up to, for lack of a better term, local tyranny, tyranny on your doorstep. So, okay, all right, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to say something, right? And I knew what I was going to say. And I'd been rehearsing it kind of on and off in my head all week. And the energy was it was just off, man. I could just feel my energy. It was like, it was like this. And I was doing, sort of some really slow breathing exercises, throughout the meeting until they called my name, just so I could get grounded and sort of say what I needed to say. And I got up there, and all of a sudden, man, that fucking Mars in Scorpio just came out, and squaring Uranus in my chart. And I'm like, it was like thunderbolts. And we get 3 minutes to speak, and I think I only spoke probably about a minute and a half. And I remember when I was done, I just felt so intense that normally I'll sit back down and I'll stay and listen to the rest of the meeting. I had to leave. I just said my thing and I walked out, and I've never done that before. And I just thought, man, I sucked. I really sucked. It wasn't the most articulate I've ever been. I mean, I felt like this volcano wanted to just fucking explode inside of me. And it was Mars. It was squaring Uranus. It was getting really close to my ascendant, but still in Scorpio. And then I talked to people afterwards. Oh yeah, you were great. You were fine. Oh yeah, you said exactly. And man, I didn't feel that way at all. I mean, I felt really tense and off. Anyway, it's right here, 29th degree. So this weekend has been on my ascendant. No wonder I've had such a good weekend. I've had Mars on my ascendant this weekend. I like that. And then we're going to go with Mars into Sagittarius. That's going to be fucking fun. Okay. That's going to be fun. I like Mars in Sagittarius. And what are we looking at here? 13th. So we're going to have Mars in Sagittarius through the rest of the month. And the sun, I think, will move on before Mars will, of course. But Mars in Sagittarius is very righteous. It is really righteous. And it will move into sextile with Saturn, and it will move into a wide sextile with Jupiter before the end of the year. And we have Jupiter going into Pisces next year. Mars, Saturn, sextile, you get shit done. Now, here's what's going to be interesting about this Mars, Saturn sextile. Because we know that when Saturn went into Aquarius, the hammer went down. Maxwell's silver hammer went down. And that's when we went into the lockdown. So we know that when Saturn goes into Aquarius, the worshipers of the Saturn cult, right, the people that venerate the black cube, they look at how they can apply their Saturnian magic in a global way. Every time we've seen this, we've talked about this before, from the Kennedy assassination, when Saturn was in Aquarius, and it involves the world. It's a worldwide event, a Kill King event. We go into the Iran war, Gulf War I, Saturn's in Aquarius, worldwide event, birth of the New World Order. That's what George Bush is talking about. New World Order this, New World Order that. That's a Saturn in Aquarius. We come back to Saturn in Aquarius again. We're into lockdown, and we're into this global pandemic. So we've seen this. We've seen this with Saturn, right? We've seen it when it goes to Aquarius. It has a global effect. It involves things like communication and quite often, either technological advances or science. So here we have Mars coming into Sagittarius, right? Now, who's that going to favor? Is that going to favor the technocrats who have taken full advantage of these Saturn Aquarius transits? Will they apply Mars, and will they be very aggressive at passing new laws? That's a possibility. I'm just telling you, okay? It's a possibility. We could see that. That's not out of the realm of possibility, and that could happen. as early as this week, because astrology is pretty neutral in a lot of ways. Sometimes it can lean in one direction a bit more than the other, depending upon what planets we're talking about. So with this Mars Saturn sextile, I could see Mars kind of lining up like that. Like, okay, here we go. These are the new laws, and we're going to enforce them. And usually with Sagittarius, they tend to be global, philosophical, and religious. Now, that said, Mars will also be moving again closer into sextile with Jupiter, which I think is different. It's almost like we have this 1-2 effect. We see the vice grip getting tighter with the Mars Saturn sextile, and then we see the reaction of that with the Mars Jupiter sextile and wanting to open things up. And I think that when we go through this process and we find this, it's tension and release and tension and release, and that's part of the process that's been connected the whole time. When they move the goalposts, it's like, okay, well, we're here now. By the time we get to there, this is where we're going to be. But about, I don't know, 2 weeks before you get there, what happens? They move the goalpost because they want you to have a release of tension, knowing that something theoretically will be over at a certain point in time when you get there. And before you get there, the goalposts are moved. And so what happens? You get let down. And now you have more tension. But you also happen to have, you have more despondency. You have more demoralization, right? Same thing with the application of the face Band-Aid. I say, well, guess what? You're not required to wear the face Band-Aid. Oh, thank God, no more face Band-Aid. But then guess what happens? 3 weeks later, a month later, 6 weeks later, we're making sure that people need to wear the face Band-Aid again. You got to put the face Band-Aid back on. This is how they work. This is how they work the tension and release strategy. And by the way, that's a strategy that's connected with programming. It's totally connected with programming because they do it long enough. And what happens? You give up hope. You lose all hope, right? And then what do you settle for? You settle for those little moments of time where they tell you something is going to happen or something happens for a nominal period of time, and then you relax and you'll take it. You'll just take it. It's sort of like being in prison, and you're in solitary, and then they let you out into the yard for 15 minutes a day. Before that, you were in general population, and you got to go into the yard for 2 hours a day, right? And you took it because it was better than being inside. So you got to go onto the yard and get fresh air and sunlight. By the way, did you know that they took all the weights away in prisons? You can't lift weights now in prison. Like in prison, you used to be able to lift weights, get strong. They actually had shit you could do in prison. They don't do that anymore. So if you're going to stay in shape in prison, you got to do like 500 sit-ups a day. You got to do isotonic exercises. But eventually, let's say you get taken out of general circulation or general pop, and now you're put into solitary, but you get 15 minutes a day outside of solitary, right? Like that 15 minutes is the equivalent of feeling like the goalposts are being moved because you get something and you're going to go back in. But that something is something you look forward to, and you become used to it or get used to it, and it becomes your connection to the outside world. So that's what happens, and they get people to ultimately become despondent, and that's how wills are broken. That's how they break wills in psychological operations, is by moving the goalpost and giving privileges and taking the privileges away. So we could see that with this Mars Saturn square. Like, okay, we're going to take your privileges away. We are going to take your privileges away. We're going to use this Mars energy to reinforce the Saturnian order that we're trying to impose. But then as Mars moves closer to Jupiter, which it will, that will take on a very different effect. And I'm not saying that they'll use that transit to open people up again. This might be something completely different, and this might be much more self-generated, and people really wanting to break free and break loose. And Sagittarius and Aquarius have very interesting relationships. Very interesting, because Aquarius has this unusual it's not unusual. Aquarius wants to be free, but paradoxically wants to belong. It's one of the strange things. Aquarius is the most paradoxical sign. So if you've ever known somebody who's an Aquarian, they really want to be free and they really want to do their own thing, but they also want to fit in a weird way. And I've known a lot of Aquarian people like that. They're very interesting people, very unique people, and they want to have a unique relationship with themselves in the world, but then they want to fit in. It's really strange. It's a very strange dynamic, but that's inside of Aquarius. It wants to break free of the orbit of Saturn, right? It wants to break free of the pattern of the planet that precedes it, but it's still in that kind of orbital field of that planet. And in fact, Aquarius used to be ruled by Saturn. So there's this weird relationship with authority and rebellion with Aquarius. Now, Sagittarius is very different. And Sagittarius does want to be free. Sagittarius is coming out of Scorpio, which is like the underworld. Scorpio is the dungeon, and Sagittarius is coming out of the dungeon. So it's like, woo, yeah, great. Just out, we're out now. We're out. And let's raise some hell. So that's what Sagittarius is really about. We're just playing with like the Placidus world. We're not playing with sidereal, talking about Ophiuchus. But you put those two energies together with Sagittarius and Aquarius, and they're really interesting energies. They're energies that really they complement one another, right? So if we're going to have a breakthrough moment during this time, I would bet that it would be this Mars sextile to Sagittarius, which doesn't really last a very long time, because that's the nature of sextiles. So let me just look at when we could kind of pinpoint that, just so that we can get all Virgo and shit about it. Okay. Okay. Closing it out, kids. The end of the year. So we're going to have a Jupiter shift here into Pisces before the end of the year. So the closest we're going to get is not very close at all. So Jupiter is going into Pisces on the 30th of December. Tantalizingly close. Now, if we go into 2022, we will have that Jupiter Mars sextile, but it'll be in Pisces. So let's check that out. So Mars is going to be in, let's see, where are we? We got Mars here, there. So Mars goes into, all right, so okay. This is a big deal. And really, this is when Mars reappears in the sky. Mars is visible again. It's not visible now. It's behind the sun. So we have a Mars Jupiter conjunction. This is the moment right here. Right here. It's the 30th of May. Mars Jupiter conjunction, 29th of May, 3 degrees, Mars in Aries, 3 degrees, Jupiter in Aries. So we're either in World War III or IV or V or whatever it is, or we're really liberating ourselves from the yoke of this time, because we're not quite there yet. We are not quite there with that Mars sextile to Jupiter. It's a good thing I looked that up, because that ain't happening. But in May it's happening. See, we got to get through this time to May. That's the big time. And I've been saying this for a while. We have to get through this time to May. It feels like May is when the reinforcements come in. That's what it feels like. It feels like in May, we've got this springtime energy. We have this, it starts off with Aries. We've gone through like some very, very intense periods, like the Mars Venus conjunction in Capricorn will have already happened. We'll have gone through that 2/22/22 period. And it feels like May is the clarion call for action in time. And Chiron will be in Aries at that time as well. So people are taking risks. The only thing I would be concerned about is really a physical war during that time, because those are definitely war aspects. Those are definitely war aspects. And Venus, we got a Venus retrograde coming up, don't we? Why don't we take a look at that? Let's take a look at that Venus retrograde. So Venus is going retrograde. Let's see, what do we got on the 19th? So 7 days from now, next Sunday night. What does that look like? It's going to go retrograde right on Pluto. Wow. I mean, that could really be a big financial gut punch with the Venus retrograde conjunction Pluto. Venus being related to finances, Pluto, banking. Ooh. Yeah, you may want to secure your finances before this retrograde coming up, because it's almost on the button, right? Venus is retrograded at 26 Capricorn, and then Pluto is at 25. Wow, that's a pretty intense. How's that going to relate to people interpersonally, relationship wise? Could cause stress. If you're not prepared for that, that could cause stress. That could cause a significant amount of stress. So I would prepare. We don't have a lot of time here. What 7 days? I mean, even I have to think about it. I'm not a financial consultant or anything, but I could, from an astrological standpoint, I could totally see this as being a big economic hit, really big economic hit. When we went through the housing crisis in 2009, Pluto was just getting into Capricorn then, and I'm like, fuck, this is going to be a hell of a time with Pluto in Capricorn. And we're not even done, because they want to basically rewrite everything. So I don't know. Get some gold, get some silver, have some cash around, right? I mean, that's what I would tend to look at here, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be in a place where you're scrambling, and you don't want to be in a place where, if you're in a relationship, that relationship is going to be under press and stress and pressure because of whatever it is you're going through. Try to avoid that as much as possible. So we've got this, and we've got this going into the new year. I also think some relationships can be reordered during that time. This is going to be a very interesting time for people shaking out relationships in their lives. And it's just before the end of the year, just before, theoretically we turn the clock, although I think we stopped turning the clock really in 2020. But This is where relationships get reordered, and certainly professional relationships, relationship with your work. We've already seen in the last 24 hours, Brian Williams and the other guy, the other clown. Brian Williams was okay. Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace is almost like the illegitimate son of Mike Wallace. You know, he's Mike Wallace's kid. And Mike Wallace didn't even really raise him. So he's got to have some weird dad shit with Mike Wallace being his dad. Anyway, both those guys are resigning. You know, that's kind of a prelude to this Venus retrograde Pluto conjunction. You're going to see a lot more people pull the ripcord. And a lot of people think it has to do with Maxwell. I don't think so. Maybe some might. Maybe some will have to do with Maxwell. I think some people are getting the sense that shit's about to get really intense. That's what I think. Now, some people have talked about a comet or an asteroid coming in right around this time too. Now, I don't know. I every time I've seen massive predictions for asteroids and comets, they've never come true. Never. I remember when Elenin was cruising by, and a lot of people thought Elenin was going to really disrupt whatever's going on here, and it really didn't. Now, do we have some space debris that, you know, drops in from wherever it drops in? Sure, absolutely. Have we seen fireballs? Yes. Have we seen shooting stars? Yes, we have. It happens. So could it happen in a much bigger way during this time? Is this why people are jumping ship? Are they heading down into their deep underground shelters? Like we call them DUMBs because they have to do with the military, deep underground military bases. We need a new name for the people that aren't in the military, deep underground homes. We'll call them DUS. Are they going to their DUS? Maybe. But it's interesting. They're what about even somebody like Chris Cuomo or Andrew Cuomo, who theoretically Andrew Cuomo is supposed to go up for trial? Are these convenient ways for them to exit stage left? What's really going on here? And let's say this has nothing to do with something that's cataclysmic, which it is. I mean, look, anything can fucking happen. But let's say it doesn't, and we move through this time. What does it say about the media? What does it say about the media when these major people, icons, theoretically, even though I wouldn't really call them icons, but these are people. Joy Behar is leaving The View. There's another one. You have these people now that are leaving these legacy media positions, and these are cush fucking jobs. Brian Williams basically said, look, the ship's on fire. I'm a rat and I'm jumping off because they're going to burn the place down. That's exactly what he said. He could have said anything else. He could have said, it's been a great time here at NBC. And, I just really want to spend more time with my family. I realize that during this time of COVID that, things are very, very important to me. I've been able to prioritize my life. He didn't fucking say that. He basically said, this shit's been taken over and they're going to burn it down and I'm out of here. I'm paraphrasing. That's what he said. I don't know what Chris Wallace had to say. I just found out about it. But media is going to look really, really different. Really different moving into 2022. And I'm wondering how much this has to do with what we're going to be able to say. That's really a big, big thing. Remember, I said that Mars being in Sagittarius and being in sextile with Saturn in Aquarius will be really advantageous for the Saturnian, administrators of our reality. They will use Mars, and they will use Mars, especially in Sagittarius, to enforce law. And I'm wondering if that this is a precursor with what these so-called media icons are doing. I think Joy Behar is getting her ass sued by Kyle Rittenhouse. That may have something to do with it. Okay, that's the chart of the moment. I'll leave you on that positive note. No, it will get positive. You know, we got this nice sun moon trine. Keep the positive vibes up. And don't, look around, don't be afraid to, see what's happening in the world. I mean, it's there. You cannot avoid it. You cannot avoid its hoary gaze. But, the true masters, the people that can live in as many realms as they possibly can, they're able to create magic in those places. So just remember that. They're able to create magic, and so can you. All right, let's get into some of this Tartarian stuff, because I think we spent a lot of time on this. And I'm going to try to, I may go till 11 tonight. So if you need to jump off of here, I totally understand. Okay. So let's look at, what chart do I want to bring up? There's this one. Let's go down here. Reset 2. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to go to what I call the period of reset 1, or it's like the precursor of what we would call like the Great Reset. Okay, so I just have to find it here. I always have the chart that I'm not ready to find. It's kind of like life. And I know I could put them in folders, which I do sometimes, and then label them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because sometimes I'm actually a fucking real Virgo. Okay, are you hiding out down here? No. Let me go back to the Astro.com, because I know it's there. This is it's important to look at these precursor kinds of moments. Okay, where are we? Did I go through all this reset stuff already? Maybe I did. All right, got this. Let's do this. All right. Okay, so if we look at what I would call the first version of the reset, it would be the conjunction. Here it is. I got it right there. Aha. Yes. Sacre bleu. I don't have to do it. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to take you back to 1850. Because this is everybody talks about 1850. In this world, this is theoretically where things really begin to shake out. We're talking 1 year after the so-called gold rush in California. By the way, I may even talk a little bit about one of the great wars that nobody has really paid a lot of attention to, And that's the Boer War. I may talk about the Boer War because it does have to do with gold. And it does have to do with this kind of post-reset moment, but it also has to do with our time that we're in now. So I might do that tonight. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up here, and I'm going to put this chart up. And okay, let's get rid of that. Where am I? Right here. Okay. So let me put this chart up. All right. So here you can see this is June 15th in 1850. And I want you to pay close attention to what's going on over here. Like, this is really very interesting. We have a Pluto-Uranus conjunction, which we will see again in the 1960s, 1966 to be exact. And we have Pluto and Uranus in the sign of Aries. And right behind it, not to be taken out of the equation, we have Saturn also in Aries. So what do we have during this time? We've got a hell of a lot of fire. This is a lot of fire. And when we look at this idea of the reset or the mud flood, it's not just this idea that all these waters rose and basically this kind of antediluvian experience flooded the entire planet. That's very Atlantean, right? This is something different. And today on John Levi's show, whom we watch religiously on Sunday, John looks at bricks that have been melted. And this is something that he's talked about. And so somebody gave him a brick that had been fired in a kiln. And he had found this other brick, I think, walking around somewhere in Utah. And they looked really similar. Like, people say, well, you can't burn brick. Well, that's not really true. It takes a lot more heat to burn brick, but it does burn. And he had two examples. One was given to him by somebody, and another he found. So why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because astrologically, if we look at what was going on during that time, we had a preponderance of fire during this period. And we could go back and Uranus is really, Uranus and Saturn here are doing this dance, this fire dance. And obviously Saturn moves faster than Uranus, so it's trying to catch up. And here it's in a 10-degree orb, so it's about as close as it's going to get in a conjunction with Uranus and Pluto. So we add Saturn in, which represents the Earth, right? Saturn is a planet, or it's a sign that is. It's a planet that rules Capricorn, that is Earth. So we have literally here molten Earth. And we have Uranus, which says to me that we're looking at some kind of technology. Now, Uranus is going to play a role here when we move into the 1920s, and I'll show you why. Because Uranus in Aries is really technological. If you look at what happens in the 1920s, from roughly from 1927 to 1935, which is where Uranus was in Aries, all these amazing inventions take place. Like, everything that's really significant in the 20th century happens. during that 8-year period. And I'll show you a few really interesting inventions that happen during this time and just after it. Like theoretically, they discover fiber optics in the 1800s. I believe it's the 1860s. They discover fiber optics. Okay, they discover fiber optics. They also discover the hydrogen fuel cell during the late 1800s. This is true. I mean, they have some crazy discoveries back then. So technologically, Uranus and Aries is always a precursor. It's always breaking ground for whatever is going to happen in Uranus and Taurus. And a lot of times in Uranus and Taurus, what they will do is they will road test it, right? They'll bring it into circulation. They'll bring it into the public. And then what happens is we get Uranus and Gemini, and then we have adaptation. Yeah, we have the quickening of the technological adaptation. And then we get to Uranus and Cancer, and what happens? We mainstream it. We mainstream those things so that they can be used amongst people in domestic settings, because Cancer tends to be domestic, right? So there's a whole cycle of evolution that takes place with innovation and Uranus, right? You have the flashpoint of Uranus and Aries, and you have breakthrough, pioneer discoveries. Uranus and Taurus, what happens there? It becomes field tested. They bring it into the material world. Usually it's with a war, which is what happens post 1935 for 7 years, 1935 to 1942. We have World War II. By the time 1942, 43 rolls around, believe it or not, the Nazi brain trust is left. They're gone. And the Nazis are going to lose that war. So right around 1943, we're into Uranus and Gemini. That's a 7-year cycle. And what happens between 1943 and 1950, that's a 7-year stretch. What happens then? We have manufacturing, the Marshall Plan, and everything starts to speed up. Everything starts to speed up in the 1950s. And then we've got another, 7-year period, basically from 1950 to roughly 19. I think it's around more like 1952 to 1959, where your Uranus is in Leo, right? You have Uranus and Leo from right around that time, and then for a brief period it goes into Virgo in 1960. When I'm born, it retrogrades into Leo for one last time, and then it moves forward again. But it's that Uranus and Cancer phase where all that shit gets domesticated, right? It's like the dishwasher, by the way, is invented during this period I'm talking about. Like the dishwasher is invented theoretically in 1850, 1851. But it takes them until the 1950s, 100 years, to mass produce the dishwasher for a number of different reasons. But you can see this. You can see this process of domestication begin to take place. So anyway, we're going to pay attention to that. But here's my thoughts. My thoughts are twofold. Is that number one, that there would be some degree of rapid. I'm going to use the word here, rapid technological discovery. Rapid technological discovery. And then when Uranus moves into Taurus, very quickly, also Pluto will move into Taurus too, which is very unusual, right? Because you can see like the turning of an age here. You really can see a turning of an age. And I'm going to say something maybe a little like different here, because we think of these precession, the equinoxes, as being these really long cycles of time, really, really long cycles of time. And, we're moving out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. And based on that cycle, sure. Precession of the equinoxes, sure. Why not? Right? There's plenty of celestial data also connected with things like yugas, which, fairly correspond to some of these dates and periods that we're talking about. But I'm gonna throw out something else, something different here. I'm going to talk about a microcycle of time. And I'm going to move the Iron Age up to the 1800s. And I'm doing this for a particular reason. So bronze is a more sophisticated version, right, of iron. It's bronze is the smelting of tin and iron together. That's how you get bronze. So I would say that the modern version of the Iron Age is right here, right? It's this Pluto and Aries period of time, right? This Pluto and Aries period of time is our version of the Iron Age. And here, when we move into the Pluto Uranus conjunction, is our modern version of the Bronze Age or the Bronze Era, which leads itself into this Gilded Era, right? This is like the Bronze Age behind me, or the modern equivalent of the Bronze Age. And it has to do with whatever happens during this time. So this kind of radically reorients these ideas of the ages that we're in, right? It radically reorients. And then what happens, at the turn of the 20th century? Are we moving into the age of Gemini? It certainly feels that way. We have two wars at the onset of the 20th century. We have these two wars, the two great wars that shape us. And then what happens after that? We move into this domesticated period of time, this post-war period. People want to come home and they want to have babies and nuclear families. And remember, all this innovation that they work on gets commercialized, commodified, and domesticated. It's the age of Cancer, right? So we're going in a different direction here. We're going in a bit of a different direction. We're instead of going from here to here to here, we're going here to here to here. We go into the age of Leo, right? And the age of Leo is the summer of love. It is the summer of love. It's it's also it's kind of the age of the hero, right? And moving into the summer of love, and really this kind of golden period, right? This golden phase where all these arts are blossoming: cinema, painting, literature. You look back, like look around now. I'm sure there's good writers. Steve's a great writer, and I'm sure he knows a lot of great writers, or at least he publishes, a few, right? And there's a literary world out there, but we don't speak about writers in the same way now. We used to speak about writers like Norman Mailer and Tom Wolfe, and this is all during this period where we spoke about great directors and great composers and great musicians and great bands and great painters, right? It's all, to me, this is all age of Leo stuff. And then we move into this post age of Leo, this age of Virgo, and everything becomes more functional, right? We move into computers, we move into data processing, we move into things like health, and we're into this kind of mini age of Virgo. And we can look at these things sort of through Pluto as well, but these epochs don't last very long. These epochs are very, very quick. And so we move through these different ages, and we're I would say right now we're kind of in this this kind of scorpionic age. We're like in the age of Scorpio because of the influx of the millennials and this idea that culture has to die and everything has to die, right? So we're in this kind of scorpionic age right now. We went through the age of Libra, where we were trying to achieve some level of homeostasis and balance and relationship and kind of somewhat artistic and feminine, but that part's gone now. So we're in, you see these ages very quickly. They move very, very quickly. But I would say this is just a theory I'm throwing out here. This is just my theory. But I would say if we wanted to just stop and look at the Iron Age and the Bronze Age, they're right here. They're like in the fucking 1800s and post 1800. And you can see even with Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, everything is sort of being melted and forged. I mean, that's just how the outer planets work. And especially at these really intense anaretic degrees. And then something big happens. Something big happens after 1850. And you can see it. And I've been through this. All these migration cycles begin. You have these migration cycles to New Zealand and to Australia. That's really happening during that time. And we begin to see this, again, theoretical westward expansion in the United States, where a handful of people build out San Francisco in no fucking time at all, right? So let me go into what I would call the reset 2 chart. Let's reset 1. And remember, there are going to be people who will take advantage of this period of time. And these are what we would call the robber barons. Have you ever seen the pictures of the robber barons, by the way? Let me show you a picture of the robber barons. A lot of you have. I'm going to show you a picture of the robber barons so you can get a good look at them. There's a lot of really interesting depictions of them in terms of cartoons. This is interesting. That's not the image I wanted. So you can see how the robber barons are slicing everything up, right? We're the titans of the Gilded Age, robber barons, or entrepreneurial industrialists. I'm sure they'd like to recast them in some ways. So these are the guys that are getting the bulk of the resources of that period of time. And the here's a picture of them. This is what they look like right here. Right there. The men in the top hats. Right there. Those are the guys that are going to essentially shape the 20th century. Now, I mean, to me, they look like fucking dark magicians. But these guys look like dark magicians. And, my sense here is that what they do is they are the inheritors. They're the inheritors of the technology that they stumble upon. And they take that technology and they have a series of these World's Fairs, which we've talked about. And the World's Fairs are a place where they get to basically break out some of this technology. And then they begin to slap patents on this stuff. And this is when a lot of the patenting process begins to take place. So these are the characters that are essentially going to be taking. And remember now, when we talk about Taurus, we're talking about major assets, major resources with Uranus and Pluto in that conjunction, and basically redrawing the resource map for not only the United States, but for the rest of the world. And also keep in mind that this is all pre-World War I. So they haven't sliced and diced everything up into nation states yet. That's going to happen. That will be an outgrowth of this period because they have to take and move people into this kind of new hierarchy that they're creating. And they will create forms of democracy to place into these new nation states. But even that doesn't last a very long time, as those forms of democracy are replaced by something else. I mean, look at theoretically the Weimar Republic, which gets replaced by the Social Democratic Party. So you can see that this is happening, and it's really. Let me show you the chart. We'll go back to the chart here. And it's really this period with the second reset. That's the first reset. And here's where the second reset takes place. And again, you will see where Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto, they're all in really, really tight alignment, really close orbs. Neptune is in Pisces, which is important because we have Neptune in Pisces now, and I've talked about this even when I talked about this a while ago, that it provides cover. Neptune in Pisces provides cover for what's happening. That's exactly what it does. You could have all these things happening now, like, oh, we have a pandemic. Oh, we have this really awful discrepancy between the races. Oh, we have this terrible discrepancy in opportunity for people, not just races. We have to have equity, and we have to have diversity, right? It's all a cover story. It's all providing a cover story for what's happening behind the scenes. That's what's great about Neptune and Pisces. It makes for really great theater while something else is happening. And they had it then too, right? So think of Neptune and Pisces as like the fog of history. And so we're having to cut through the fog of history to try to understand what may or may not have happened during that particular time. And I do think that there is a there. I think something significant did happen there. So let's go back to the chart and we can look at this right here. So you can see where Uranus and Pluto are moving in concert again. And this is as close as they will get. This is 1852. So we see that whatever happened during that Uranus, Pluto, Saturn phase in Aries, where it's very fiery. I just want you to keep that in mind. It is very fiery astrologically, and it's explosive, right? That's what Uranus brings to the table, this explosive. So really how I see that troika, that trinity, that stellium in Aries is that things are being reset. They're being reset. JJ is probably in chat still. Yeah, she's a jeweler, right? One of her rings. My father was a jeweler, so I watched the lost wax, casting method and process. I watched the whole thing, and you would take, gold or silver, and you would put it in a crucible, and you would heat it up, and it would melt. It would melt. And that's like the Aries phase. That's the Aries phase of this process. And it's in a crucible, and a crucible is an alchemical chamber. So we're talking about a form of alchemy here. So and then when it would get really, really hot, my father would unleash this thing on this centrifugal crucible, and it would spin like crazy. And he'd have it like totally bolted down on this table. And I would just think this thing would fucking take off, right? But never would. And so what would happen is that molten gold or silver would then get shot through into, guess what? This mold that was made out of plaster of Paris, right? And inside of the mold was a wax ring, and it would be in there, and it would harden inside of it, right? So then what would happen is that the gold would come through, and essentially it would move into that mold, and it would, as the centrifugal crucible would slow down, it would settle into that mold. And then he would take it, he'd take that chamber out, and he'd throw it in. And I love this part. He'd take it into the bathroom, and I'd get the water ready, right? I was like the sorcerer's apprentice. But I'd get the water ready in the bathroom. And he'd bring it in, and he'd drop it in there. And I love that shit, right? All the steam would come up. And then, once it got cool enough, you'd reach in there and pull apart, this kind of plaster of Paris mixture, and there'd be the ring, right? It'd be connected to this thing called the sprue, and you would cut the sprue off, and then you would begin to polish and do all the things you do. It was right there, right? File polish, buff, wax, bang. That's what's happening here. It goes through this process. We got this Uranus, Pluto, Saturn process. Everything gets molten during this time. And I know it sounds fucking crazy. It doesn't mean that we don't have a prehistory before that, because I think we do. And we have to talk about that somewhere down the line. But it's right here, right? It's right. And what happens during this time? They fucking find gold. They find gold. They go out, and they go to California, the Sierra Nevadas. And how do they find the gold? Well, they sift through earth. It's the same process that my father went through when he cast a ring. You got to get there. You got to sift through the earth, just like we had to sift through like the earthy plaster of Paris-y kind of stuff through the water. Very similar process. And then there's the gold. This is what they're doing here. This is exactly what they're doing. By 1849, they're just theoretically discovering gold. And now we're moving into this Gilded Age, right? Where the gold gets essentially, again, theoretically, put into interiors. Well, really, did that happen then, or did that happen before then? But we know now, just by looking at this, that from this molten process, something else happens. Something solidifies, right? And by 1852, the migrational march is on. And they're filling up Australia and New Zealand and all these other places. And then we begin the process, which ultimately manifests itself in these World's Fairs. So I am going to go on record here that this is really right here, when we can see Pluto, Uranus, Saturn, that this is the beginning of our age. And why is it the beginning of our age? Because it's terra firma. That's why. This is terra firma. You're looking at all these elements coming out of a very molten and volcanic period. And all of a sudden, there's this great discovery that's taking place. So if we can look at this from the perspective of these inheritors, right? I mean, look at everything they're theoretically stumbling upon. All these things will eventually make their way into the Industrial Revolution. It will happen. It will happen. There's the first Industrial Revolution, which theoretically takes place in England, right? Where factories start to happen. And then there's what they call the Second Industrial Revolution. When does it happen? It happens in 1870. 1870, a mere 18 years after this, and everything begins to go parabolic, as they say. So I found a website where, and I'm not sure it's going to cover the entirety of some of these inventions, but it will cover some of them. And some of them are quite interesting. Let me see if I can find it. It's right up here. Okay. So this is not quite complete, but we could take a look at it. All right. So here's the 19th century, and I got another one for the. So here we go. We're just coming out of this period of time. So we have the sewing machine, the gyroscope, and we have an airship, 1852. We have a glider, 1853. Now, this is what's really blowing my mind is we have the principles of fiber optics in 1854. Now, I was led to believe that fiber optics really came into vogue or was commercialized in the 70s and the 80s. But here we go. He demonstrates the principle of fiber optics. Well, if you could demonstrate the fucking principle of fiber optics, don't you think that maybe fiber optics might have been around? There's a real possibility. And remember, this is all post 1850. I tried to go back a little bit further, but it won't let me for whatever reason. Let me see here. Oh, it does now. Yeah, let's go back a little ways. So we have the steam locomotive in 1814, the soda fountain in 1819, the stethoscope, a raincoat, Portland cement. The electromagnet, theoretically, was invented in 1825. I'm betting that it was invented before 18. So we have a microphone invented in 1827, the Braille printer, the typewriter in 1829, the sewing machine, which comes around a couple different times, the electric dynamo in 1831. So we're really looking at what around 1840 or 1843. Louis Braille. Louis Braille invents the stereoscope, theoretically, right? We have photography in 1835, the mechanical calculator in 1835, the propeller, the revolver in 1836, Morse code 1838. Now, this is interesting. Right around 1839, now we're moving into that period. So this is going to be Uranus and Pisces. Pluto, by the way, is still in Aries during this time, right? So we're seeing like vulcanization, which is the exact process I've been talking about, is vulcanization. When something gets heated up, it gets vulcanized, and then it takes shape and form and materializes. That's all part of the Pluto and Aries alignment here. And we have vulcanization, rubber vulcanization, platform scales. Now, check this out. In 1839, So this is right when Uranus is going into Aries. The hydrogen fuel cell is theoretically invented. Now, I know people who've been working on hydrogen fuel cells for a long time, and theoretically, you could actually use them in cars in production to this day, right? So they're conceiving the hydrogen fuel cell in 1839, right during this Uranus and Aries period. Now, this is really interesting too. Like this guy, Alexander Bain, invents the facsimile. He's fucking inventing the fax machine in 1843. This is one of the things that you can actually get some background on. He invented the transmission over wires or faxing. 1840, he had a patent on this in 1843 for improvements in producing and regulating electric currents and improvements in timepieces and electric printing and signal telegraphs. Alexander Bain had created a fax machine transmitter that was designed to scan a flat surface made of metal using a stylus mounted pendulum, and the stylus picked up on the images of the surface. An amateur clockmaker, Alexander adapted parts from clockmaker. So this is what they're saying, right? This is the official story. So they're actually able to send these in the 1900s. He invented and improved the practical fax and the photoelectric system. Did you have any idea that the fax machine was around in the 1800s? I didn't have a fucking clue. I just remember fax machines showing up in the 90s. I do remember very primitive ASCII devices in the 80s with the little Mac SEs. But this gives you some kind of sense here as to what they had at their disposal. So they in 1845, Robert William Thomson patents the first vulcanized rubber pneumatic tire. So before that, they had these tires theoretically that were all solid. So these are the tires that we're driving on today, the pneumatic tire. You know what that means? They had to have pneumatics. That means they had to have air pressure and air systems, which is a whole other discussion. Now, this is interesting. This guy, John Herschel, in 1840, theoretically develops a blueprint. Now, you can't go in there and go check the patent for that. But again, that's going to be, so right here is when Uranus moves into Placidus zodiacal Aries, right here. So, which is also interesting because we have the beginnings of modern dentistry. The modern dental chair happens with Uranus and Aries, the face, the mouth. Anesthesia for tooth extraction, Uranus and Aries, the mouth. The safety pin, little pokey, theoretical Aries stuff. And again, here we go. The dishwasher is invented in 1849. Theoretically, right? I mean, so again, some of these things could have been the result of innovation of things that they may have already had and found. I mean, if you think about it, right? Hydrogen fuel cells pretty fucking advanced for that period of time. But even something like a facsimile, which again, I didn't even know existed. So then what happens, right? So that's just that period leading up to 1850. That's that Uranus, Pluto in Aries and Uranus in Aries period. So if we were to move forward in time and we go to, let's say, 1851 to 1899, now things like really fucking take off. Right now we have, come on, can you go there for me? Yeah. So now we're going to see things. Oh, no, it won't. Hold on. Continue. Let me do this. Oh, there's another way to skin a cat. Okay. So this is this period now. right? Where Pluto, Uranus, and Saturn all go to Taurus together. And that's when a lot of people believe that this is this reset period. So we'll take a look at some of the inventions here. So the sewing machine keeps coming up, right? Now we have the washing machine. So by this time, we're moving into like this grounding period, right? Pasteurization, milk, washing machines, sewing machines, all very Uranus and Taurus stuff. Now we're moving into elevators, machine guns. We have the bicycle, and we have the lock invents a bicycle and with the lock. So the two of them go together, right? The combustion engine. So I think by this time we're definitely into, let's see, Uranus is going to be in Taurus until 18, roughly 57. So by 58, we're Uranus and Gemini combustion engine movement. So all these things are sort of happening cyclically, right? But there were other things going on. I mean, they had electric engines before the combustion engine. Nobel invents dynamite. We have the torpedo, typewriter. So we're definitely into Uranus and Gemini. And these are all the things now. Now we're headed towards, this is where the Industrial Revolution starts, right here. So look at all these things that are part of this second industrial, the precursor. It's all there, right? All these things are there, and they're ready to put them all together and go into mass production during this period of time. We saw, so we have this idea of the light bulb, right? That's there. Seismograph, metal detector, all these things. All right, we got a lot of machine gun happening, a lot of weaponry. And by the time we hit the 1900s, which is a really important time, everything is pretty much up and running. You know, Tesla invents the AC motor. Did he really invent the motor, or were these things contact lenses? You got contact lenses in 1887. Think about that. Contact lenses. You got the first four-wheeled motor vehicle in 1886. And, you know, it's easy to say, well, these are all just the byproduct of innovation. Yeah, that could be true. It could be true. But let me just take you back. Let's go look at, you know, something that would be considered to be kind of, well, here, this is what I found interesting. I found this to be interesting. So if you go back and look at history, that's the history of Poland. So this is really interesting right here. They went through a period of destruction of homes in England. And it happens right around this period of time. This is really weird. So I stumbled upon this today. And they decided that we don't need these places anymore. We're going to destroy them. And we're going to put up inferior architecture. This is a trip. So this is the destruction of country houses in 20th century Britain. Okay, so this is interesting. British nobility have been demolishing their country houses since the 15th century, when comfort replaced fortification as an essential need. For many, demolishing and rebuilding their country home became a lifelong hobby. Oh, really? In particular, during the 18th century, when it became fashionable to take the grand tour and return home with art treasures supposedly from classical civilizations. Okay. Were they really coming home from their art tours, or were they plundering? During the 19th century, many houses, so we're talking the 1800s, were enlarged to accommodate the increasing armies of servants needed to create the famed house lifestyle. Less than a century later, this often meant They're of an unmanageable size. So, did they really create the house? This is the big question. Or did they inherit the structures? In the early 20th century, the demolition accelerated while rebuilding largely ceased. Isn't that interesting? So they theoretically went through a period where they were, well, let's tear down the cool old place and let's rebuild a cooler, bigger, newer place. We don't have to really worry about garrisons and catapults. So let's just make, a really cool, kick-ass, castle-y, big kind of country home. Then we'll make a hobby out of it because we're just going to get more cool shit by traveling to foreign and distant lands and bring them back. And we're going to need bigger places to put all this stuff, right? This is the idea behind this. But then the 20th century comes around. It's like, I think we better get rid of the evidence. Let's just start demolishing these places. And let's not rebuild them because, well, you know why? Because maybe we can't rebuild them. In the early 20th century, the demolition accelerated while rebuilding largely ceased. The demolitions were not confined to England. So think about that. It looks like it's an English thing, but you know what? They're like destroying these buildings all over the place. But spread throughout Britain. And by the end of the century, so we're talking the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, even some of the new country houses by the architect Edward Lutyens had been demolished. There were a number of reasons: social, political, mostly importantly, financial. Well, if you're fucking rich enough to build them, don't you think you'd be rich enough to maintain them? In rural areas of Britain, the destruction of the country houses and their estates was tantamount to a social revolution. Oh, well into the 20th century, it's common for the local squire to provide large-scale employment, housing, and patronage to the village school, the parish church, and a cottage hospital. The big house was the bedrock of rural society. Since 1900, 1,200 country houses have been demolished in England. In Scotland, the figure is proportionally higher. There, 378 architecturally important country houses have been demolished. Why are they demolishing these architecturally important houses? This is kind of a big deal. It's like, you know what? We need to cover our tracks here. That's what it feels like to me. 200 of these since 1945, including the destruction were works by Robert Adam, including the Balbardi House and the monumental Hamilton Palace. Well, let's take a look at these things. What does the Barbardi House look like? We only have a small illustration there. Well, that's a fine looking house. Got to demolish that. And that's a watercolor. Okay. I'm sure there's probably other depictions of it. And what does the other structure look like here? This is Hamilton Palace. Let's see. Oh yeah. Gotta get rid of that thing. Yeah, we gotta get, look at this building. Now, first of all, it looks pretty fucking old. Right? Like this is an old looking building. And to me, this is one of your classic Tartarian Greco-Roman structures. Look at the size of it. Oh, we got to get rid of it. We got to tear it down. Hamilton Palace. It's the Duchess of Hamilton. Let's take another look at this thing. Yeah, this is your typical kind of Tartarian structure. Let's see. Doing that little famous little V there, right? They all do that shit. Even she's doing it. That's interesting. We have another angle of it. Okay, so this is the north front portico. Looked a little bit different at one time, didn't it? Looks like they sort of took things apart in stages here. This is a very impressive looking building. Very impressive. What else do we have here? Well, look at that. To me, this is occupied. Like they're just putting some furniture and shit in here, right? That's what it looks like. Look at this place. Look at the ceiling. And they're going to tear this thing down. Why do they want to tear it down? It's a pretty cool place. Again, just like let's just throw some furniture in there. Let's throw a few pieces in there. Look at the ceiling on this thing. What is that? The back? That's probably the back end. Oh, look at that thing. What the hell is that? What is going on? Now, that could be a water tower, but it could be something else too, right? We're into speculation tonight. That was in the Lawn Gallery. Look at this thing. Until Daniel and the Lion's Den by Rubens. This was in this place. Jasper, you seen this? Napoleon, interesting stuff. So all these, this is interesting. This is the gallery. So that's the mausoleum, huh? They turned it into a mausoleum. That's a really, that's a pretty significant sort of dome structure. John Levi gets into these mausoleums. So they just decided to tear this sucker down, right? Because this is going on during this period of time, this demolition period, which also has a lot to do with Pluto and Uranus in Taurus, which is solidification and destruction. This is a beautiful structure. Look at this thing. Look at that. Look at this. And they're tearing these places down. Wow. Very interesting. Let's go back here. During the 20th century, the dispersal of a country house's contents became a frequent event. This was the sale of Mintmore Tower's contents highlight the issue. So they have all these incredible houses. Look at this. So this was demolished in 1963. Now, why the fuck would you want to demolish that? Why would you want to demolish that? So again, we're looking at something. I stumbled on this thing. Like eventually what happened is that they passed a law in England so that they would pump the brakes on tearing down all these structures. But they were gung ho. They were going after tearing this stuff down because honestly, I don't think they wanted people to see what was really happening. Right? They didn't want to see people to see what's really happening. So let's play along with this this Uranus cycle a little bit here. Okay. So we know that Uranus goes into Taurus in roughly 1852. Right. So by 1859, it's in a 7-year cycle. It's in Gemini for 7 years. So 1859. So by 1863 to 1870, Uranus is in Cancer. So what is going on right around that time? Because I think that's a very interesting period. And how does that relate to things like orphans and the orphan trains. So let me go back here for a second. I'm kind of going on. There was something else I found that was really pretty interesting. And let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this had to do with 1845. 1845. And what was it? So 1845, and I got that's the 7-year cycle between 1845 and 1852. So we're talking about that. Let's see, Uranus was in. I think this is right around the time where Uranus is getting close to being into Aries, right? Something really interesting happens right around then. Let me see if I can find it. Where is this thing? It has to do with the Masons. And then I stumbled upon something else here. It was, let me see if I can find it on the page. Hold on. I think it's kind of important, actually. There it is. Okay. So really, in 1845 is where we see the global spread and adoption of Freemasonry. So just keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind, because I believe that the inheritors are linked to the Freemasons. I'm fairly convinced that the inheritors are linked to the Freemasons. And you can see this through this period of time. Because at 1845, and it says it right here, I'll show you, according to Wikipedia. And then I'm going to show you something else that's kind of crazy. But I think this is it. Yeah. So you see right here, date unknown. This is 1845. This is just 7 years before 1852. So we're really in that Uranus and Aries phase. It's that 7-year period. The ancient and accepted right for England and Wales and its districts and chapters overseas is founded. So you're seeing the spread of Freemasonry around the globe, or around the planet, around the realm. Let's call it around. It's happening right here. Boom. And then that 7-year period, right? The 7-year period is this period of whatever molten is happening, discovery, and then we have this reassimilation in 1851, 1852. But who's already there, or who's on the ground, right? Who is looking at the potential of these places and spaces that are being inherited after something occurs. Something occurs during this period of time. So then I said, okay, well, let me look at this. So I went into this. This was funny. So when I decided to look at Masonic bodies, I'm like, okay, let me just go over here, look at Masonic bodies. And I found a lodge of Freemasonry that is connected to Q. Whether it's connected to Q directly or indirectly, I don't know, but that's what they call it. And I was surprised, and I had never heard of this. So here you go. There's your compass in the square. So you go through all these different orders and degrees, right? Allied Masonic degrees, Ye, Antient Order, Noble Corks, yada, 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 yada. Shriners, the Mystic Order of Veiled Prophets of the Enchanted Realm. And then it's like I saw the Order of Quetzalcoatl, colloquially known as the Q, a group mostly in the west and southwest of the United States. And I thought to myself, this is pretty fucking interesting. So let me click on this. Order of Quetzalcoatl, colloquially known as the Q, is a Masonic invitational body, and it is heavily involved in philanthropy, and its main contribution is towards the transportation funds for Shriners hospitals. So the Shriners are like Ethereum, and Q is like Solana, or Quetzalcoatl is like Solana or Polygon Matic. So the order derives its terminology from Nahuatl, and its rituals are loosely based on Aztec ritual, including the use of the Teponazita war drum and the sacred drink pulque. Okay, so these guys, so this pulque, I don't know what they fucking put in it, but I bet it's something really absolutely disgusting, and it might have some peyote or something that makes them throw up and hallucinate, because they go through this pulque ritual. I'm getting a little off track here, but it's kind of interesting. So the order consists of initiation, cote, and 2 degrees, artisan and master artisan. Candidate becomes a cote when he's initiated into the order. Then he becomes an artisan through ritual ceremony. He may advance to the master artisan either through consecration ceremonies at the order's annual business meeting called a Feast of Fire, or through traveling to either the temple of Quetzalcoatl at Teotihuacan in Mexico City, or Chichen Itza in Cancun. Right. So I've been to Chichen Itza. So they have this whole thing, and apparently they drink this pulque, and they throw it up. Right. This is the pulque. So anyway, I just thought this was this, and I went to another one of these pages, I think on it wasn't in here. It was a different page. But anyway, that was just a little side trip where there's this interesting order of Freemasonry called the Q. But this is what I thought was interesting, that right around here, right around this period of time, you see Freemasonry establish itself in other parts of the world. And at the same time, we're also in this period where um, the this kind of, I think it's a resetting of topography. And again, you look at what they were doing in England, it's like, we got to get rid of these fucking places. We've got to demolish these structures. And that's just, because in a lot of those places they didn't have wars. In World War One, I'm convinced, was not only about the redrawing of countries and sticking people into these, so-called fucking democracies. That there was also about the destruction of a lot of these structures, and a lot of the old world was destroyed during World War One. It's exactly what happened. And what wasn't destroyed during World War One, well, they were going to destroy it during World War Two, which is exactly what happened. So the remnants of that other realm, at least in that part of the world, are harder to come by, which is why it's interesting to go through the United States. And there are all kinds of Tartarian hunters in the United States, and you can find things that look like Tartarian structures in the United States, because we haven't had a world war here. We haven't had 2 world wars. So, and clearly there's still some things in Europe that are around, but there's not nearly as many, and there's still not as many things that have taken place here. Okay, so let's bring this back to astrology, because this is really what we're talking about. We're trying to locate these epochs and eras through astrological time. And I do believe that the resetting takes place during that stellium of Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto in Taurus. That is the reset. That is the reset. Now we go through another reset, and that reset's going to begin to take. And again, it goes into that World War One phase because they're using a lot of this technology that they're able to incorporate and create with the second industrial revolution. And I started to post some pictures on Twitter about what that second industrial revolution looked like. Let me go back to what was that period of time I was talking about? It was let's see, 18, was it 1870, right around there? Let's see what's going on in 1870, because let's just see what was happening. Here, let's look at the 1870s. Okay, so we have Franco-Prussian. This is kind of the lead into World War One. What I'm really looking for is looking for some clues around Uranus and Cancer and the relationship with children during this period of time. Let's see. The first version of light bulb pops up in the 1870s. Again, theoretically. Mark Twain publishes Tom Sawyer. Let's see what else. Jules Verne. Which when you look at Jules Verne now, do you think Jules Verne is really talking about science fiction? Or do you think Jules Verne is actually reporting about what might have already happened? It gives us a whole other take on, because when you look at like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it really feels a lot like steam. It feels very steampunky, and steampunk feels a lot like Tartaria. Right. So the 1870s, 1870, Anaheim's incorporated. I'm just trying to find some connections here with kids during that period of time, because we know that the incubators, because there's a World's Fair here where they have, I think it's somewhere in Europe. It's during this period, and I just want to see if it connects with the Uranus and Cancer period incubators, 1800s. Let's just see really quickly here. I'm just doing this on the fly. So yeah, 1880. So we have these warm air incubators, and they show up. 1860 is the infant incubator. Okay, here we go. 1860 is the infant incubator, and they bust these things out at these World's Fairs. I think one of the ones was in Leipzig at the Leipzig World's Fair. I'm pretty certain, and they have another one in Paris. So these things are connected. So I just want to make sure here. So let's look at 1861. So let me look at this here. Let me go into the ephemeris. I'm just doing this on the fly a little bit because I have a hunch. I didn't really go down this path, but let's just look at 1861 in real time. Let's go to 1860, turn of the century. What do we have? So we're just coming into Uranus in Gemini in 1860. So in 1859, 1858, 1859, we have Uranus in Cancer. And I'm betting that the development, let's see, of Uranus. Oh, let's see, Uranus. No, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let's go back. Hold on. So 1860s Uranus in Gemini. Okay, let's go to 1867, 1867, 1870. 1870, we have Uranus in Cancer. It's at 20 degrees. So somewhere around 1865, right around there, 1866, 1867. Let's look at that. Yeah, bang. So 1866, we have Uranus in Cancer. So right around this time, this is when the incubators are showing up, right? This is right around when the incubators. So it's the infant incubator, 1860 to 1866, 1860 Uranus in Gemini by 1866. Right, Uranus is in Cancer, and it's going to be there until 1873. So this is really going to be the bulk of the development of this period, right? Right around here. So okay, so yeah, in 1880, there's a bird exhibit at the Paris Zoo in Paris. So the egg hatchers are happening right around then. So let me go back to 1860, 1866. What's going on in 1860? Let's go to 1870. 1866, 1870, 1870 incubator. We're right in that sweet spot. Yeah, right here. Right here. Right there. I'll show you guys. So these are the incubator babies of Coney Island. Right here. Check it out. This is so fucking bizarre. This is so bizarre. And look at the hat this guy's wearing. I mean, what the fuck is that? So Coney Island is Coney Island's an amusement park. The incubator babies. It took a war, famine, and poultry to develop a technological breakthrough. So this is all at Coney Island. And this is where these incubators would show up. The incubator babies of Coney Island. So 1870 to 1871, right? Boom, right there. And you start to see these things all over the place. 1870 to 1871. The incubator babies, the Atlantic City experience. Right here. We're all over the place. And it's in 1870 when the incubator theoretically is brought out for public consumption. Very interesting. Anyway, it's another one of those developments that takes place as part of these World's Fairs. And the World's Fair is really taking shape in the early 1900s. So there's another, so we look at this period where we go into Uranus and Aries one more time, right? So we've gone through, theoretically, we've gone through this Uranus and Aries period, and, you know, there could have been some real, I wouldn't say interesting technological developments. I think a lot of that stuff was already here. I feel like the big development that happened during that time was this resettling of these land masses. That's my sense. And then we have this kind of discovery period, and we have this new formation, this vulcanization that takes place. You can see it astrologically: Uranus, Pluto, Saturn, all in Taurus, right? Vulcanization, land, you have inheritors, and then this process starts. And you have the second industrial revolution. You have the robber barons who are jumping on whatever they could find. They bring out these World's Fairs, they patent the stuff, they bring it out to public consumption. And then we have this new Uranus and Aries phase that happens again from 1925, 1928 to 1935. And that's when all these major developments take place, like X-rays, radio transmission, transistors are developed during this time. Again, theoretically, right? All these major discoveries that are going to be part of the 20th century all take place theoretically during this Uranus and Aries period. And I've television, right, happens during this time. At least, that's when it begins to break ground between 1927 and 1938. Theoretically, radar again happens during this time. All these things, they're going to be put into what happens after 1935, which is that 7-year period between 1935 and 1942, and that's World War II. Right. So you have these periods of technological development, and then something happens, right? Something major happens. In the first reset, it's the accumulation of those things. You have the Industrial Revolution, the second one. Then it bottoms out in the 20s, the Gilded Age. They get everybody completely hooked on the stock market. Everything bottoms out. You have poverty, and then the whole cycle starts all over again. And then we come out of that. So now let's go to this other period where there's a Pluto-Uranus conjunction, and that's the 1960s. And I will posit that the 1960s is a reset. It's another version of the reset. So let me go into 1966. Okay, what is that? That's pre-World War II. Yeah, you could see pre-World War II here. I brought this up. What is this? 40? Oh, so this is 1943. Right? This is 1943. And this is what happens. I just wanted to show, again, I'm just showing this to you guys as kind of a evolutionary kind of journey through astrology. Right? So here we can see Saturn Uranus in Gemini. This is 1942 now. And by this time, the real Nazi brain trust has fled. Germany's going to fall. And we can see the beginnings of what's going to happen. That the technology that's been road tested during World War II will then become commercialized right here with Saturn. And we're going to see over this next 7-year stretch, basically from 1943 to 1950, especially being initiated by Saturn here, where the mass production of technology is going to start to take place. Right? You got the Marshall Plan in Japan, where that's going to take off. Even Germany and Western Europe has its own version of the Marshall Plan, and America becomes industrialized. So this 7-year stretch, right, from here to here, that's going to be basically to 1950. And that's when all this innovation goes into the home, right there, with Uranus and Cancer. And this is when the bulk of the baby boomers are going to start to be born. So we have Saturn right here for 3 years in Gemini, 3.5 years, and another 3.5 years, 7 years later, it'll also be in Cancer. So this is when you have a lot of home building, right? Suburbia begins to start to take shape. It's right here. This is a big period, right? So we can see that these cultural cycles are really dominated by the outer planets, and Saturn will bring the form to whatever kind of changes are taking place vis-a-vis the outer planets. Okay, so I just wanted to show that to you. All right, so now we get to 1960, which I think is a really important time. Which one is this period? This is, what is this? Oh yeah. Okay, so this is 1935. That's when Uranus goes into Taurus. You don't need to see that. But what's interesting though, with Uranus and Taurus, where you see really the beginning of World War II, there's a lot of destruction. There's a lot of destruction that happens in World War II. It happens in Europe, obviously, not so much in America. But you can see where with Uranus and Taurus, we've had a lot of destruction in America between fires and the tearing down of statues. Like, and even this last weekend, we had this horrible tornado that went through Kentucky. I mean, just obliterated a whole town. I mean, it's gone. It's totally gone. So maybe the destruction with Uranus and Taurus is going to be more about the United States, because the last time it was really about, I think, profiting from the destruction that had already occurred. That's what it feels like. Okay. Here, I'll just show it to you. So this is where Uranus was, just as World War II is really heating up, right? You know, they have the 1936 Olympics. And then after that, it just takes off. So there's the beginning of Uranus and Taurus here, right there. Bang. Okay. And we can see Pluto by this time where's our friend Pluto? Pluto had, by 1935, moved into Cancer. So there you go. Okay. All right. So let me just I'm stopping everywhere except for the 1960s. But we're going to get there. 1850 reset. We've been there. Here we go. All right. So this is what another reset looks like. And it's the 1960s. And here we see Uranus and Pluto again. They don't get to those final. See, the thing that makes it really important and interesting about that 1849 to 1852 period is that it's right at the end. I mean, right at the end of Aries and into Taurus. Like, you don't see that happen very often in astrology. Now you see it here with Uranus and Pluto, but they're right here at 16 degrees. So they're in the second decan of Virgo, which is the the Capricornian decan. And clearly this is where everything becomes anti-establishment. So Dane Rudyard did a big series did one book on these conjunctions of Uranus and Pluto through the 1960s, and how that they would change the world. And they clearly did, and we did go through a reset, and we did see cities burn during this time. We saw Watts burn, we saw Detroit burn, we saw Paris burn during this period. It would happen in 1968, but we would still see the burning of cities during this time. And this is right in that period also where, we would begin to see the death of these public figures, starting off with JFK in 63, where, by the way, Uranus and Pluto would both be in Virgo. They wouldn't be this close. So we're seeing these cultural figures like King and Kennedy and X and King get assassinated. And those assassinations they're pretty important, right? Especially King. Especially Kennedy. You get these kill the king rituals even Martin Luther King being named king, which reminds me, I do want to go back to I think it's the McKinley death. The death of McKinley in Buffalo is really important. So I want to go back to that. But you can see here that the world is changing, right? It is changing. And we are in the midst of a major reset during this is 1966. It's a huge year. It's a tremendous year. This is when Vatican II happens, and the Catholic Church is completely remade during Vatican II. This is a very, very big year. And it's the lead in to, what's going to happen across campuses. The Vietnam War really picks up in 1966. It's still being marketed as this war that um, can be won, right? It's a war that's going to stop the spread of communism. And culture is going to change here. You're going to see the division really for the first time of the ages, right? You're going to see old versus young begin to emerge during this period. There was a movie that came out just right around this time, maybe 66, 67, called Wild in the Streets. And it's about a youth revolution. And essentially, everybody over 18 is a square and should be eliminated, right? I think Richard Pryor's in that movie. I think it's one of Richard Pryor's first movies. So you can see the division starting to take place. And you have old versus young. You're going to have the beginnings here of like the race riots, which are beginning to start around 65, 66. So black versus white is starting to come online. Straight versus hippie is starting to come online. The feminism which has already been birthed by Betty Friedan, I think around 1963, right around 1963. Betty Friedan's book is published during that Aquarian cycle. She's an Aquarian. And by the time 1968 rolls around, Chiron is in Aries, and we have really the real hardcore birth of like second wave feminism. So you have the war of the sexes. You have the war of the sexes. You have race riots. You have old versus young. I mean, it's all starting to happen here. East versus West. The sort of the bipolarization of consciousness is taking place, and so now the table's being reset very quickly, and nowhere along the way do we get to have any real chance or opportunity to settle into any period of time, right? So this is 1966. 20 years before that, World War II is ending. And now we're off into the Vietnam War with a brief sojourn into Korea. And all these things are tumultuous. They're incredibly tumultuous. So we can never really catch up with our past. And all of this is intentional. It's all very intentional. So we get to see this cultural reset begin to take place during the 60s. And it kind of leads into where we are now. And a lot of the people who have been, I think, instrumental in being foot soldiers of this version of the cultural reset were born when Neptune and Capricorn were in conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, right? Neptune and Uranus were in conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. So this is sort of the back end, the period we're in now, which is being fueled by people who have, which are the millennials, by the way, with Neptune and Uranus and Capricorn. I mean, they're here to be a part of this new version of the reset. And a lot of them are very politically active and active in the media. And I think we have a sense and not all of them, by the way, a lot of great millennials, but they're the kind of the ambassadors of this new reset. And it's not Pluto and Uranus, but it's Neptune and Uranus as being activated through these individuals. Boy, it's 11:30. I've been going through a long time tonight. Listen, I'm going to wrap it up because I bet a bunch of you have checked out by now. I hope not. I hope this has made some sense. So we're going to come back next week and we're going to get into Vitalik Buteran's chart. And I won't make this so esoteric about these timelines, but I think it's important. And I think that by understanding this, we can have a glimpse astrologically as we can look back during that particular time, that particular period of 1849 and 1850, 51, 52. And we can see that something took place there. And what I was hoping to do was show you sort of how this thing's unfolded. All right, the time has flown. Thanks for being here. Sometimes I just kind of get on a roll. We'll be back tomorrow on the 15 minutes of flame side of things. So let me just check to see if there's anybody still around here. I just lost track of the time. I've just totally lost track of the fucking time. Where are we? Are we still here? Are we still on? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Wild in the streets. Okay. Thanks for being here. We'll do Buteran next week, and I think next week I'll get into what is that? I'll get into some predictions for 2022 next week. We'll do a light prediction show next week, and I'm going to do a private webinar for my subscribers for an in-depth 2022 prediction session. We'll do that. We'll do a light one on Sunday. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Use your head in order to what's real, your heart to say what's possible. 3.5 hours. You guys want me to ramble on? I'm gonna say goodnight. It's 11:30. It's 11 fucking 30. So we'll be back next week. And what I'll try to do is maybe do a little bit of a follow-up. We'll do a little follow-up. Buteran, and then we'll get into projections for 2022. All right, take care. Love you all. Have a good night. Bye for now.